All right, hello everybody. We are live. Welcome to our YouTube stream of episode 379 of Keeping Karlsson. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Elon? How's it going, man? It's good to be with you and the friends, the people in the chat. Thanks, everybody. I don't know why I'm talking like that. It's really nice to have you all with us. Thanks for joining us with what I'm pretty confident is going to be an informative show that's gonna help you win your week this week and your
Well,
league this
yeah,
year.
I guess next week. Although there is a game at 10 p.m. tonight, so maybe something we'll say about either the Islanders or Vegas could help people with this week. But what could we say? I don't know. Brian will say if Jonathan Marchessault's good. If he's
Yeah.
in free agency, add Jonathan Marchessault for tonight.
Stay tuned to find out if Jonathan Marchessault is good.
I hope he's good. I just
Nice
traded
to
for
see
him.
Matt in the chat, who I did beat in the cupful this week.
Ooh.
Feels good. That was like a revenge for last week. But Matt, you came really close. My team actually ground to a halt after Thursday. So I think I'm lucky that I hung on.
This Brian Matt rivalry is like multi-year now. Didn't you guys like fight it out last year also?
Yeah, I can't remember if we had a matchup that was intense or if we were just like at each other's throats about trading.
Right. Or maybe you were just fighting for like the top two spots of who's going to get a bye. It might have just been like fighting in the standings. Even if it
Well,
wasn't a
there was
matchup.
definitely some standings jockeying, posturing, but I think Matt was out of reach, more or less,
Harsh.
at some point. Anyway, I'm glad that nothing I do or say tonight is going to help him beat me.
Okay. Fantasy Tidbits wants to know one ad left. Who do I add tonight? So I'm going to say Marchessault.
Matt could still beat me.
Okay. Good luck to both of you. I hope you tie.
Oh, this is crazy. He's got 40 points today from Josi, Pasternak, and Duchesne.
So what's the score?
I'm up by 20.
And how many games does he have left?
Matt has Riley Smith. And what's left of the game with Duchesne and Kubalik and Josi and Spurgeon. I don't know. It's
it's not a guarantee.
It could happen.
One period left. Though usually I find any game that's like 5-2 going into the third, it might just stay that way. Or Minnesota will come back. I don't think Nashville necessarily will pour it on.
I also have Sorokin probably starting.
Okay, that'll help. Wait. I thought that the backup. So I didn't even look. Who's playing?
I haven't seen an update. All I saw was speculation that it could be Sorokin, that it's not automatically the backup.
Okay, Schneider. All right. Anyways, I guess, yeah. So thanks everyone for watching. I think this is going to be maybe the best show ever of Keeping Karlsson. So the people who watch the YouTube video, FYI, we also release an audio version that's edited and all this pre-talk is removed. And we'd really appreciate if you also check that out because that our downloads are counted there and not here. So even if you're not planning on listening, even if you listen here, you can just subscribe on Apple Podcasts, download the show every week, and I don't know, helps us out. Not that much. I mean, don't go too far out of your way, but we wouldn't mind. But anyways, all right, let's be.
Helps us count you.
I was joking, by the way, fan, about Marshall. So he's not a free agent anywhere. I traded for him. But anyway, okay, let's start the show. Who should he add?
Who's out there?
Dobson. Add Dobson if he's
no.
There. He could be.
He plays once.
No, for tonight.
Oh.
Oh, you're thinking sure? A strategically.
I think it's for next week.
One ad left. Who do I add tonight? Oh, if it's for next week, listen to Stream Scheme. They'll tell you. I already listened to it. All right. Ready for me to go, Brian?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. Oh, I didn't think of how I'm going to intro the show. Hosted by two guys who both won our weeks of Cupful. That's pretty boring. Hosted by two guys. Okay, well, whatever. I'll just
Did you win Ben's league this week?
Yeah, I won it all. Clean sweep.
Me too.
I lost last week in all my leagues, so it only was fair. Okay. Hosted by two guys who are already. All right. Yay! Yeah! Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast. The first. Oh, I forgot what the words are. Yes. Welcome everybody to the everybody to the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who, even though the season is only 2 weeks long, I feel like I've been playing for 2 months with all the stress of the league, but that's, I don't even know, guys. I don't even know. Brian, you need to help me out with this. I prepped the show. You just prep my joke. You're the joke guy. You always tweet your name.
You hate
puns.
my jokes.
Oh, that's true. Damn. Okay. All right. Hosted by two guys who are both happy. Okay, whatever. I'll just say happy to be coming off a win in the cupful. Even though that's not even funny. It's not even a joke.
Who are riding
Maybe the chat room
could
throw something at me. What's like a
who
player?
Who will be working harder than the New York Islanders next week? Who will be putting in as much work tonight as the Islanders will put in all week?
Oh yeah, that's pretty funny. Okay, let's do it. See, it's a good joke. Maybe I like your joke like concepts, and then it's like that's why we're a good team. Maybe you have the concept, and maybe I'll have the delivery, and together it'll come together. That's what Shannon Ricard. Are you up to date on Survivor?
Yes.
Do you know how Ricard was like saying like I come up with the ideas, then Shannon like executes the ideas? I like that. Okay, I don't know which one of us is which. Okay. Yay! Okay. No, you're not. do. Okay. Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who plan to do as much work as the New York Islanders next week, because we'll do one show on Sunday. I guess the Islanders play on Saturday technically, but yeah, rough week for them. But anyways, we'll get to all that in just a sec. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky. Super excited for today's show. We're 2 weeks in to the fantasy season, and we've got a lot to talk about. I'm really excited, Brian. We'll try our best to squeeze in as much content as we can into this 1.5 hour blog. I guess people who are looking at their podcast feed will already know if we were able to actually meet that 90-minute threshold that we're trying to go for. Brian, what's up? It's the Fantasy Hockey Robot. Brian, come.
Hey, we're going to be way over that 90-minute threshold if that intro goes any longer. There's so much to talk about that happened in the last week of fantasy hockey. Of course, you've already heard about some of it on short shifts and hopefully on Stream Scheme too, but now it's time for the annual weekly Sunday Keeping Karlsson mega show, and we are pumped to be here tonight. Thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, either being here with us or listening after the fact. However you get the show, we're happy you're here with us, and I think we're going to have a fun one today. Brian, I tried my best to, we're going to walk around the league, talking about some big things. I'm going to try to, have a connection and, some good segues as we go from team to team. So I guess people listening, you could, let us know how we did with these segues. Some of them were a little bit of a reach, but I tried my best. Before we get to everything, of course, let's mention that Keeping Karlsson is so proudly presented by DopperHockey.com. It's your #1 fantasy hockey website out there. We wouldn't even want to be presented by any other website, and that's the truth. It's amazing. They've got great articles by great writers all the time, so you want to be up to date with the ramblings, all the deep dives, plus the tools over at Frozen Tools are amazing. So they know what they're doing over there at DopperHockey.com. And if you want to win your league, you should go check it out. And so then people will know that you know what you're doing as well. Okay, so Brian, I guess let's get started. And I want to go right to Carolina, where the Hurricanes destroyed Columbus yesterday for their 4th straight win to start the season. That's right, they're 4-0. They're firing on all cylinders after what seemed to me, look at me, what do I know, okay? To me, it seemed like not a great offseason for the Hurricanes. They gave away Nedeljkovic and Bean basically for nothing. They lost Hamilton to free agency, but all the returning top players on the team are crushing it. The ones who were there last year are back and better than ever, as are their big offseason signings of Tony DeAngelo and Freddie Anderson, both looking like shrewd moves for GM Waddell so far. DeAngelo has 4 power play assists in 4 games, so I guess these definitely replace at least the power play contributions that Hamilton was making. And Frederik Andersen has been absolutely phenomenal. He's started all 4 of the games, won them all, of course, .944 save percentage, only 7 goals against. It's less than 2 goals against per game. It's crazy that he's doing so well after being so brutal last season for the Leafs. And he's not the only goalie, by the way, having a big bounce back after having a big bounce back after a rough season last year. We've got guys like Bobrovsky and Holtby who are also seeing huge resurgences so far in this young season. Of course, small sample size, so we'll see how they all do. But sticking with Freddie Andersen, how much should we read into this amazing start for Andersen? Let's say we were doing Schmore Goalies Board again right now, 2 weeks into the season. Would he be a tier 2 guy? Because I was worried that maybe he's going to split time with Ranta. It's kind of injury prone. But now all of a sudden I look at it and it's what was I thinking? Carolina's a top team. He's crushing it. He's their clear starter since he's played the first 4 games of the season. Other guys who we had ranked ahead of him in Schmore Goalies Board, like Robin Lehner, Darcy Kemper, even Vasilevsky and Hellebuck, not doing great at all. Anyone who has any of those guys would wish they just had Freddie Andersen. So how much are you believing in this amazing start by Andersen?
I don't think it's such a stretch to believe in what Freddie Andersen is doing. And I know that's hard to believe with what we'd most recently seen from Freddie Andersen. And maybe you don't think I'm coming off terribly sincere, but I think we've talked a lot when we're talking about Freddie Andersen's dips last season and the one before. We knew he was struggling and mostly recovering from an injury, but this is a guy who was between 917 and 919 in his save percentage for over 4 years. That's crazy consistency for a goalie, for Freddie Andersen to be in that 2-point save percentage range between 917 and 919 for 4 years. We don't see that. We see goalies going way up and goalies going way down so often. So good for Freddie for being in a solid place for so long. And yeah, he fell off for the last couple. 2 years ago, though, it was just the couple months towards the end of the season that really did him in. And it's like, so, it's not fair to just take a small chunk of the season, but it doesn't his 909 would have been higher if it wasn't for being like an 880 over the last 2 months of the year. And then the following season, which was just the last one, it was weird with COVID and he was still like fighting injuries. And by the way, Andersen was actually okay at 5-on-5 last year, but not on the penalty kill, which is what really tanked his numbers. Andersen has only once in his career performed below his expected Fenwick save percentage at 5-on-5. So again, this is me saying, I don't find it such a stretch to believe, hey, Freddie Andersen is actually pretty good. Of course, we're also not going to go so far the other way, thinking that this 4-game sample from Andersen is something to define him by for the rest of the year. But it's a reminder that, hey, Andersen's been a pretty good goalie through his career. And if he's moved past some of his hiccups, namely injuries, then we could expect some solid stuff from him going forward. He's been really good so far this year at saving goals against, outperforming his expected save percentage. He's doing hard work. So we'll see if that continues. And yeah, if we were re-ranking our goalies or whatever going into the season, I would have him higher. But I think the main reason I'd have Andersen higher is because we weren't sure how starts would be split with Antti Raanta. Of course, we assumed Antti Raanta would just be injured a lot. But if they were both healthy, I don't know. I think we were thinking it would be 60-40, but so far it's been 100-0 for Andersen. So we'll see how that split goes forward. But so far, Freddie Andersen has played all 240 minutes so far, which gives him a great starter status. I don't think his upside is as high as some of the guys we had in our top 2 tiers in Smore Goalies board. But hey, if he can keep playing consistently for one of the best teams in the league and be getting the lion's share of the starts, that's really exciting for Freddie Andersen.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. Like, if let's say you have Andersen, is now the time to really go for a big fish? Like, would you make a trade offer to like the Robin Lehner manager, the Darcy Kemper manager, or maybe even the Connor Hellebuck manager, and say maybe even like, maybe that would even get accepted? Like, Hellebuck has a save percentage less than 900 this season. By the way, so does Vasilevsky, but obviously no one's going to accept that. But like, if you had Andersen, would you be going for, say, one of those 3 guys people were so high on going into the season?
I think I would have no chance of getting those guys.
I think you're wrong. Like Robin Lehner, 1-3 with a 901 save percentage. Darcy Kemper, 2-2, 894 save percentage.
Sure.
Like, obviously, if you're, depends who you're playing against. If you're playing against a bunch of Bryans who are always like, it's too small a sample size, then yeah, that's for sure. But I think you're definitely wrong. I don't want to pull a Yahoo and be giving these like crazy trade recommendations that no one would do. I really do think you might be able to pull a Lehner, Kemper, or Hellebuck. Maybe not Hellebuck, but definitely a Lehner or Kemper for Andersen. But you're saying then that you wouldn't even do it, since obviously you're saying no one would be smart to accept it? So, or like, you're saying you would do it, like you prefer those higher guys?
I'm just thinking, actually, like the same way you are, that I might not be in a league of Bryans, and draft capital and sunk costs matter a lot to people, right? So like they probably put a lot of stock into grabbing Hellebuck or Vasilevsky or Lehner, or you didn't mention Vasilevsky, but one of these top guys right off the bat in their drafts. And I think they might be resistant to giving them up so early.
It's just like a way for you to like not answer the question. Like, I'm just curious, like, who would you rather have right now? If let's say you have Lehner and you're offered Andersen, or vice versa, who would you take?
I think I would still prefer to have Robin Lehner, but that's it's really hard. I mean, it's crazy because if you're trying to sell high and buy low, it's always fraught, even in the best of times. But if you're trying to do it with goalies, it's just like 3,000 it's just like 3,000 mental backflips to try and figure out exactly where I'm going to land with it. If I could trade my Freddie Andersen for Robin Lehner, yes, I think I would, just because Lehner has more upside. But I think he'll also, like, it seems early returns show that he might also be a little more volatile. So, I don't know, Elon. I think I would just sit tight.
Yeah, I guess you and I are a little bit different. Right? I think right now I would take Anderson over Robin Leonard. We'll get actually to Vegas in a little bit. Things are obviously not going well for them. Doesn't help that Pacioretty and Stone are injured. I think I'd also trade Anderson for Kemper. Like I'd prefer Anderson over Kemper as well, just because he hasn't had the best start. So who knows if Francouz starts
Yeah,
getting an opportunity. So yeah, give me the
I
goalie
love
who's
it.
4-0. Like, but
Yeah,
maybe that's like too rash.
I think it's I mean it's a big reaction to have 4 games into the season. But I mean, as is evidenced by a trade you made that you actually made this week, which we'll get to in a little while. I see the value in you trying to get out from under, like you're mitigating risk, right? You're saying I'm afraid of how low this guy could go, like Lehner or Hellebuck or whoever,
Or
and feel
Kemper,
like
is what I was
Freddie
talking
Anderson,
about, yeah.
Kemper, and Freddie Anderson is a steadier option or feels like a steadier option. So I'm just going to, I might take away some of my upside, but I think I'm also taking away some of my downside in the process, which is a truly legitimate and reasonable move.
Yeah, and of course, by the time we talk next week, Freddie Anderson could have like 3 stinkers, though.
Yeah,
So far, so good.
exactly.
All right, so then another player I definitely want to give their flowers to on the Canes and then another player that I definitely want to give their flowers to on the Canes is Andrei Svechnikov, who's off to a scorching start. Svechnikov's 2 assists in the 5-1 win over Columbus yesterday brought him to 4 goals and 3 assists in 7 games so far. No, sorry. Oh, man. Brian, are you with me?
Hey, sorry. I put in my head. Sorry, I had to go kill a bug.
Oh, damn. Did I like
And I
not.
think you muted yourself at some point.
Did I miss the whole thing?
I heard you and then I didn't hear you. Why don't you just start over for about Svechnikov?
Oh, man. I blew it, everybody. Sorry. Again, that's why I recommend downloading the audio version. This will be edited out. All right, starting now, this is going to be a pristine show, I promise. Brian has to kill a bug.
Is your mic correct?
Is my mic not correct?
Well, now you sound worse than you did before.
I mean, I'm on the same mic. Does it sound bad?
No, you sound fine. Okay.
Well, no, tell me the truth. Does it sound bad?
Well, can you sound better?
Well, I don't know if there's something wrong.
I don't know. So if you check your mic and you're on the right mic.
Testing. Hello.
Yeah.
My Audacity looks good. Like.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right. Sorry, everyone.
Right. Yeah, Elon, you were muted. Thanks everyone in the chat.
That sucks. Well, I was all distracted because your camera turned off. I didn't know what was going on. Okay. Now we're set. It's going to be great. Apologies. All right. And then another player I definitely want to give their flowers to on the Canes is Andrei Svechnikov, who's off to just such a scorching start himself. Svechnikov's 2 assists in the 5-1 win over Columbus yesterday brought him to 4 goals and 3 assists in 4 games so far. And what may be even more impressive is that Svech is shooting at a torrid pace, 21 shots in those 4 games. That's over 5 shots a game. He's playing with Necas and Trocheck at even strength, also on the top power play, so obviously getting the great deployment. By the way, Aho and Teravainen not far behind, 6 points each for them, but Svechnikov leading the way with those 7 points in the 4 games. Brian, at the risk of throwing, like, maybe this is like too big of a layup question to you, but let's just do it. We're starting the show. Let's start easy and then we'll ramp up from here. But is what we're seeing from Svechnikov this year for real. And what I mean by that is, like, last year he only had a 63-point pace. The year before he was much better, 74-point pace in 2019-20. But I'm wondering, like, should we be expecting Svechnikov to like crush all those numbers and have a huge career high this year? Like, are we looking at like point per game or higher? Like, do you think that this is the year that Svechnikov cements himself as next year being a potential first-round pick in one-year leagues?
Yes, I mean, it depends on how deep your first round is, I guess. If you're just going into a redraft, I don't know if Svechnikov sneaks into the first round with his performance this year, but he could sneak into the second for sure. And undoubtedly the third. As we've said on the show, anyone who is down on Svechnikov going into the season, you were reading too much into his numbers last year, thinking, 66-point pace, he took a step back. You're missing the forest for the trees with Svechnikov, if that's all you've been seeing. Svechnikov's accomplishments at age 19 were signs of huge things to come, and we said preseason that we expected Svechnikov to at least reach that 75-point range this year. It's too soon to say, you're getting super excited, Elon, and that's great. It's too soon for me to say that he's going to overshoot that 75-point range, but I mean, he is overshooting something fierce right now. Svechnikov has 21 shots in 4 games, twice as many shots per game as he was averaging last year. And Svechnikov is basically putting up power play level shooting numbers at 5-on-5. You know, the way you can just fire away if you're a trigger man on the power play? That's what Svechnikov is doing at even strength. And they're not just some low quality floaters either. He's not just shooting from anywhere. These are high danger shots, as shown in his expected goals and scoring chance numbers. So this is really exciting for Andrei Svechnikov and what he's been able to do this season. He's also shooting 20%, which is twice as much as his usual 10%. But if Svechnikov takes twice as many shots and regresses back to 10%, then he's going to be doing exactly what he's doing right now. I guess my only curiosity is how Svechnikov is putting up so many shots and points with a full 60 seconds fewer at 5-on-5 per night. So I'm kind of curious to see where his ice time lands, because I think, Elon, if you want him to be a point per game guy, we're going to need to see him get at least as much ice as he had last year. Having less ice is probably not a way to get all the way up there, but point per game definitely seems within reach now. Now I just want to see Svechnikov get up and grab it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the kind of thing to remember. Sorry. Now I feel like my air conditioning's on. What a night. Okay, whatever. Yeah, totally. Look, I think the thing to remember, of course, is he's only 21 years old. So it's like when you compare his numbers to last year and think like, if he doesn't get as much ice time, maybe he could just still be getting better just as a player. This is the time in a player's career where they're still improving. I don't know, getting more adjusted to the league. He's looking like a superstar so far. But of course, 4 games in, I'm really excited to see how this season's going to progress for Svechnikov. If he's just going to be 75-point guy like he was a couple years ago, obviously really valuable, or if he's going to continue to take that step forward and just be a real superstar in the league. So definitely someone to watch there in Carolina. This whole team looking very good, but of course there's a lot of teams that are starting good. Off the air, Brian, we were talking about a bunch of teams that are still undefeated on the season. We'll get to a bunch of them on this show. Okay, Brian, so we were talking about Anderson, and of course, while he and his friends are cleaning up in Carolina, things aren't going so well for his former teammates in Toronto, who just got drubbed by the Crosby and Malkin and Letang-less Pittsburgh Penguins yesterday. Somehow, Toronto still couldn't manage to not lose 7-1 to this depleted Penguins squad. The Leafs fell to 2-3-1 on the season, and no one is feeling the pain of the Leafs' poor start harder than anyone who drafted Mitch Marner in the late first, early second rounds of their drafts after his 100-point pace season last year. Everyone who drafted Marner is looking at Svechnikov and going oh boy, I think I made a huge mistake here. I should have gone Svechnikov. Marner went pointless for the 5th game in a row on Saturday, with his only point on the campaign being an apple in the season opener versus the Habs. He also only has 6 shots total in his last 4 games. He's basically given his managers nothing over this past matchup, right? No peripherals, no shots, no points. I'd imagine a big part of Marner not picking up a point in his last 3 games is that Austin Matthews hasn't picked up a point in his 3 games since he started his season last Monday. Matthews has taken 17 shots, though, in just 3 games. I'd imagine Marner would have gotten an assist on the majority of those shots if they had gone in, but they didn't. So no assists for Marner, no goals for Matthews. So Brian, I guess the question with both of these guys, Marner and Matthews, is simply, are they doing everything right and just having bad luck? Marner's giving Matthews sweet feeds that he's just not burying for whatever reason? Or is there an actual reason for concern that perhaps Marner's ADP was a bit too high and people would have been better off waiting for Svechnikov, who so far has been the much better option?
Yeah, I was going to ask you after this discussion whether you would rather, whether you project yourself to pick Svechnikov or Marner first next season. If it's me, I'm still thinking Marner goes ahead of Svechnikov, but you know me, I'm a traditionalist. I like to think back to, 14 days ago where we had these guys ranked. I thought you wanted to jump in.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll probably give myself the season to get a bit more data before I decide who I'm going to draft first next year, but definitely so far, not looking good, right? So, Brian, what do you think? It sounds like from what you're saying is you're not too concerned about what you're seeing from the Leafs this past week?
So, I mean, with Austin Matthews, it's been a really rough year for a guy who entered the year carrying this newish reputation as a legit top three fantasy pick. Thankfully, Matthews' numbers under the hood look good. So, like the way they did last year. So, I think things just aren't clicking for Matthews yet. And there's definitely some trouble brewing in Toronto the way things are going, right? Because when things don't click, you can't just wait for them to click. The pressure builds and builds and builds and builds. And you look ahead at their schedule. They've got Carolina next, revisiting Freddie on fire Anderson. And then they've got Chicago, who are right now losing 4-1 to Detroit at home, still struggling. They have yet to hold a lead this season. And then Detroit after Chicago. So those are three really interesting matchups because you've got Carolina, who like are a fellow cup contender, and if the Leafs lose to Carolina, then it's like, oh my gosh, they need to beat Chicago or Detroit, right? But those teams are in their own little world where they seem like they need to win too. Anyway, there is a chance that those are games that the Leafs can bounce back in. I'm not about to sell off Matthews or Marner at all. I did ask on Twitter if anyone had been trying to buy low or, had succeeded in buying low on Marner or wanted to sell him off. And I saw, we had a response from well, I guess I'll use their names because it's easier. Timo Hollenstein, who said they were offered Nylander, Ehlers, and a top 2 pick for Bedard. That's who the top 2 pick would go for Marner, Guryanov, and Valimaki, and said, I will not sell. We also had someone ask, should I offer my Kopitar for Marner? It's like, yeah, I think you should offer your Kopitar for Marner. I think that's great. Someone else said they were offered Marner and Bergeron for Marchand and Landeskog in a dynasty, and they declined. Someone also said they got Marner for Jack Hughes in a keeper league. So there are all these other calculations here. For me, you know me, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to move very far off my draft day value. Now that we're 4 or 5 games into the season, I'm definitely a little more concerned about Marner than Matthews after, he disappeared in the postseason and now it really struggles. There's a lot of ugliness that comes with performing the way he has in Toronto or the way he hasn't in Toronto, especially with the backdrop of his contract negotiations. I saw James Myrtle over at The Athletic suggesting it may actually be time to move on from Marner and or Tavares if the Leafs can't get things figured out in the near future. And I don't consider James Myrtle to be like your casual Leafs alarmist type. So it's a weird time in Toronto, and they need to come up with some results fast. And I think Matthews and Marner are going to provide those. Although I have seen some talk about separating the two and saying, hey, put Marner on his own line and just let him try and figure out his business there so he can find his way back. I definitely still prefer Marner to Svechnikov. I guess the test would be, Elon, if I had Svechnikov, would you offer me Mitch Marner for him?
I mean, it's really close, right? To me, like right now, I think I'll probably just stick with Marner, like you're saying. Like it's just too short of a time span. And like, again, if Matthews buries a couple of these shots over these past week and he took 17 of them, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation. But at the same time, in a league like the Cupful, at least the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, there's like shots are worth a lot and Marner doesn't take them. So he's going to need a lot of assists. Like the reason why he was valuable last year, even though he didn't take that many shots, was because he had so many assists, enough to bring him to a 100-point pace. So he's going to have to get going soon. Maybe Svechnikov is a safer pick just because he has a floor with his shots, which give him like a good peripheral floor. But yeah, I guess I'd hold Marner, but it would be tough. I got to tell you, part of me would just be thinking I'd rather just take Svechnikov at this point because he's taking over 5 shots per game. That's 2.5 couple points per game, even if nothing goes in the net. And then plus, obviously, he's like over a point per game himself. So Marner's going to have to really start picking up those assists soon. Maybe give it one more week if you can, and let's see what's happening. Obviously, all the things you're saying about are the lines going to be switched up. Doesn't sound like any of these sources were like the coach or management. It's just like people on Twitter giving their opinions. So I don't know how much you could read into any of that. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, yeah, this is going to be a big week for the Leafs. Another disappointing Leaf, by the way, that I wanted to ask you about is defenseman Jake Muzzin, who was like super solid last year, putting up a 42-point pace along with almost 2 shots per game, great hits and blocks numbers. A really great like 3rd or 4th D in a multi-category league. So far this season, Muzzin has been a total bust though. Only 1 assist and 7 shots in his first 6 games, so just barely over a shot per game basically no points. The blocks are coming, which is nice, but only 5 hits also, so that's down from his hits from last year. Muzzin is still rostered in 54% of Yahoo leagues, ahead of guys who have been off to really good starts, like Shattenkirk, Dobson, Gossesbehere, even like Forsling, Moritz Seider. He's ahead of Seider still. Like, I don't know. If I had Muzzin and I saw all these other defensemen eventually getting scooped up or doing really well in my free agency, I'd be wondering, why am I holding on to this Jake Muzzin? Like, what's even his ceiling anyways? And right now it doesn't seem like he's even going to hit it. He's not getting any power play time, right? Like, the Leafs have been going with other guys ahead of him, even on the second power play unit. So at this point, do we consider Muzzin a snoozer and tell people they could probably drop him? Or is he kind of like a Marner where you expect everything to just settle back to what he was doing last year really soon?
I don't think I expect Muzzin to just jump back to what he was doing last year, because I think last year was a bit lucky for Muzzin. I don't think there's much different happening in Muzzin's underlying numbers compared to last year. Just low on ice shooting percentage, down at 6.5%. That's probably the difference between him having 1 point and him having 3 or 4 points, when you consider that he's seen his teammates shoot 10% with him on the ice in previous years compared to the current 6.5% his teammates are shooting now. But it's hard to be holding Muzzin because he's often a pretty boring, if reliable player, but now he's even more boring and kind of unreliable. I think I just would want to adjust your 40 plus point expectations, assuming that's what they are, to be closer to 35 points. And he could still hit 40, but that's just, I think over 40 would be asking too much for Jake Muzzin, especially like he's never had power play time, or even if he hasn't done anything with it, just 2 power play points in his last 110 games played. So this has never been a key part of his production on the power play. And then, you mentioned his peripherals might have dipped, and they have. Jake Muzzin is actually hitting at half the rate per 60 minutes that he has in the past. Curiously, at the same time, Muzzin is getting hit at 30% higher a rate as he has in the past. I'm not sure what to make of that. But of course, if Muzzin is no longer hitting and he's only a 35, 40 point guy instead of a guy who is hitting in 40 to 45 points, that does make a probably pretty big difference in whether you want him on your roster. He's tough to roster right now, and I don't know that a whole lot is going to change.
Yeah, the Leafs play Monday, Wednesday to start next week, I believe. So at least you could hold Muzzin for 2 more games. But after that, if he still doesn't do anything, I think you're okay to probably drop him. I wouldn't want to be holding on him for too long. He's not a Marner, right? He's not even getting power play time. So even like you say, like a 35-point defenseman, it's hard to even do that with no power play points if he has to do that all at even strength. So yeah, I'd be very nervous as a Muzzin manager and would probably be having him right on the cusp of being dropped if he doesn't do something soon. By the way, yeah, in the chat here, Ancient K100 is saying like Riley's also struggling. So yeah, the Leafs are struggling. So let's give them another week and see how everyone does, or at least another couple of games. By the way, also, I'll just throw it out there since I didn't have a plan for the show. Ancient K100 also asked if we should be concerned about Panarin. I wasn't planning on talking about the Rangers today. I'm just going to say this. Ryan Strome, his centerman, has been injured or has been on the COVID protocol list, right? So he hasn't even been playing with his normal guy. Also, he has 4 points in 6 games. It's not as if Panarin has been terrible. So all that to say, like, definitely not. Like, don't be concerned about Panarin. Don't let someone like swindle you in a trade. Panarin's amazing, and you're not going to change my mind because of him only having like a 65-point pace and not the 90-point pace after 6 games while he hasn't had his normal line mates. So we're on Muzzin. Now let's go to Muzzin's former team in LA, where Muzzin's former defensive partner, Drew Doughty, exited Friday's game versus Dallas after a knee-on-knee collision that looked pretty bad, though apparently the news is it's not as bad as it may have looked. So as far as I've seen, there's still no timeline for when he'll return, but apparently it's not like going to be like a huge fracture that's going to be months and months. But definitely for the short term, Doughty's not going to be around, which is a huge bummer for him and anyone who drafted him, because he was off to like a Svechnikov-esque start to the season, 7 points in 4 games. So hopefully he'll be back soon. In the meantime, though, it looks like there's like 2 defensemen on LA who are going to get the bump in deployment and power play time. At least so far, we've seen Sean Walker and Matt Roy both getting the power play time kind of split pretty evenly. So far, nothing of note from Matt Roy, but Sean Walker is looking pretty appealing to me. He's put up assists in 2 straight games in Doughty's absence and has taken 9 shots over those last couple of games. So obviously he's enjoying the extra ice time and he's putting a lot of pucks on net. Who knows? Maybe if he keeps doing that, a couple of them start going into the net and all of a sudden we've got a guy who's shooting. He's already been good for peripherals. If he adds shots and goals and some assists to the docket, all of a sudden this Sean Walker could be a pretty decent stream and potential hold for as long as Doughty is out. I added him in cupful for Saturday's game, was happy with the result. I'm going to hold him for Monday. LA plays on Monday, and then I'm going to reassess. The Kings also play Thursday, Saturday, Sunday next week, so it's a 4-game week for the Kings. So if you need defense and you're in a multi-category league, to me, Sean Walker is pretty pretty appealing. Brian, do you think that these shots, along with the huge opportunity with Doughty out, is enough to make you recommend that people should be rushing out to grab him, especially for his big slate next week? Or are we going to preach caution here and say, hey, this is Sean Walker, don't go nuts?
We're going to do the second, especially because, I mean, the reports that I've seen about Drew Doughty seem to be mostly of relief that Drew Doughty isn't going to miss extended time. And if he's not going to miss extended time, it seems to me like there's not much of a middle ground with hits that look like this. They're either actually okay, even though it looked really scary, or they're out for a really long time. So I expect Doughty to be back before long, unless I hear otherwise. In the meantime, if you want to try and get an LA Kings defenseman who might get a little more power play exposure, Sean Walker is the safe bet, because as you mentioned, Elon Walker has been this good peripherals guy that we have recommended in the past when you need them. He kind of took the mantle on LA from Derek Forbert, who took the mantle from Jake Muzzin as being a big minute shot, hit, block D on LA, which is about as much value as you can get outside Doughty on their blue line. I wouldn't let go of anybody of significant value, though, to add Sean Walker. Matt Roy is actually the guy I guessed would get a look without Doughty, but it's probably a toss-up. All three of those guys, Doughty, Walker, and Matt Roy, are all right-handed. So if you wanted to toss one on the top power play, they wouldn't have to change the configuration. They just have to copy what Drew Doughty does on it. So I'm curious to see what happens, but I'm also not feeling like it's that crucial that I pick the right guy in a shallow enough league where, I don't need to be reaching, or I'd be dropping someone really good for Sean Walker or Matt Roy.
Yeah, I mean, this would be for a streaming spot that then you hope turns into a hold. And for me, it's just, we're looking at 18 shots in 5 games so far for this Sean Walker. And a lot of those shots came in games when Doughty was there, even. And now with Doughty out, he's seeing this increased ice time, which leads to more shots. I mean, he's just like, to me, you know me, Brian, I'm a sucker for shots. That's why I'm saying I might like Svechnikov even over Marner, because I love the shots. Sometimes shots turn into goals, as we talked about on the Patreon cast last week. So I don't know. To me, I think he's like a really good stream for next week if you need D.
And I won't argue with that at all. That Sean Walker has been and will continue to be a decent stream for peripherals. I don't think Drew Doughty being out changes his worth at all, though.
Oh, well, he'll get more power play time and more ice time. Like, he moved to the top pairing while Doughty's out.
Yeah, but I don't think Doughty's going to be out long term. Like,
I see.
This is, okay.
We're on the same page. Yeah. Next week, you're in agreement with me that for next week, Sean Walker's good, but after that, maybe not. So don't drop someone really good for him.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Of course, another big downside to Doughty being hurt is the Kings are likely going to be like a worse team. He's a very important part of this team. Cal Peterson got shelled for 7 goals against versus the Blues on Saturday. I know we were telling people going into the season that this could be Cal's year to establish himself as a valuable fantasy goalie. So far, Jonathan Quick still gotten 2 of the 5 games, and Peterson now hasn't been that great, especially in this, now that since Doughty's been out. So do you think Peterson is like scarier now and people who drafted him should maybe be looking at other options, or are you going to hold steady and still think this could be a good year for Cal Peterson?
It's a little scary. I mean, Doughty plays 26 minutes a night, and now he's gone for those 26 minutes a night. So that's scary for Cal Peterson or Jonathan Quick, who's ever in the Kings crease. They do have decent defensive depth, though. I'm hoping that they're a team that can just make an adjustment and be mostly okay. It's unlikely that Peterson and Quick don't feel it at all. But in the short term, it might take a couple games to adjust. But in the long term, I'm actually not changing my outlook on Peterson or Quick too much.
Okay, yeah. I just feel like the Kings are so weird. It seems like this is the year Cal Peterson, give him the bulk of the starts, because Quick's contract is going to be over, and Peterson, you just signed to a $5 million per year deal starting next year. Still kind of seems like they're going to go 50-50. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. I don't think that I would have Peterson as high in Sport Goalies board now as I did before, just because I really thought that he would be getting the Frederik Andersen treatment, right? Of getting a bunch of the starts and maybe Quick only playing on back-to-back. So far, seems like they still like Quick a decent amount. And plus, with Doughty out, it's obviously not great. All right, Brian, so we've still got a ton to get to, but why don't we just take a little break now? We're half hour into the show, and thank a couple sponsors of the podcast. Super excited about our sponsors. I like them both a lot. Okay, so let's start with our friends over at Underdog. Brian, Underdog? I've gotten more and more into it over these past couple of weeks, and it's so fun. Last week we talked about it and how it's so fun that you could do these drafts every single time you play. So it's you're betting on the games on a single night, but you get to draft against other people. So it's kind of like daily fantasy, except instead of just picking players, which is kind of stressful and annoying. You have the budget. I don't know. For me, this is really fun. Just have a draft, which is what I feel like I'm good at. You could use all your value over replacement strategies when you're deciding whether to take a goalie first or a defense first. And then you see how you do. That's great. So that was what we talked about last week. Then all of a sudden, you've been showing me this whole pick pick'ems thing, which is also so fun. As you said, you have these random players where it's just like, okay, Connor McDavid, he's going to get plus or minus 1.5 points tonight. And you're just like, okay, I think McDavid's going to have a good game. And you could like string a couple of those together. You put 2 or 3, then you get a multiplier if you get them all right. It's so fun, Brian. I really love Underdog. And I'm not just saying it because they're our sponsor. I've been really having a blast this week.
It's been really fun. I mean, they tell us when we do the ad, they're like, say we're the easiest and most fun way to play fantasy hockey. And I'm going to say, if you're playing DFS, it is. Underdog, like legit, is the easiest and most fun way. They have a lot of like nice little touches in their app, especially in the Underdog Fantasy Pick'em game. Like you said, Elon, all you do, pick over or under on your favorite or your least favorite player stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. I think that's if you hit 6 over unders, but you can choose if you do 3 for a smaller multiplier or go up and up and up for a bigger multiplier. And Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy to use website and mobile apps. You can pick between 2 and 5 players, and you can take home some cold hard cash. And the best part is for our listeners, if you use the code KEEPING, you're going to get $10 in bonus cash when you sign up and make your first deposit. That's right, $10 bonus cash. All you need to do is sign up with the code KEEPING and make your first deposit of $10. You'll get $10 free. That's good for entering a daily draft or making a pick'em slip of your own. So if you're listening to this, then it's likely Puck Drop is coming up in some manner of hours. So what are you waiting for? Go to UnderdogFantasy.com, the App Store, the Google Play Store, and sign up with the code KEEPING. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code KEEPING, and join us in playing this super fun game. We actually shared our pick slips, Elon, on Twitter the other night. We've been sharing them in our Discord DFS channel most nights, along with some other listeners and patrons who are in there. But I think we both won on the last one, which is great.
I lost. But you won.
I won.
I had some like goalie. Oh, it was like Koskinen. I had him under 28.5 saves. It's like my 4th option. And he was like going into the 3rd with only 20 saves. So it seemed like not too bad of a bet. But then he ended up with like 30 something. Like Oilers just ended up letting in a lot of shots, and Koskinen stopped too many of them. So, but I know you won. So congratulations. Brian's getting rich here. Okay.
Well, I wouldn't say that. This is not a way to get rich, everybody. This is a way to have fun and use play with money you can afford to lose. Speaking of which, responsiblegambling.org is a really helpful site for coming up with some great strategies to use while you play so you don't get too swept away.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Speaking of sweeping things away, I want to talk about our second sponsor for this episode, which are our new friends over at Manscaped. Brian, I'm wearing my Manscaped shirt that they sent me, which comes in the box you get from them. This is a really cool product, okay? So hockey's back, and okay, so this is a cool product. I guess this ad is going to be more targeted to the male listeners of our podcast, though obviously anyone is eligible to buy the products over at Manscaped. But they've got a lot of tools that are just going to help you to Manscaped, to keep yourself all trim and fresh downstairs, okay? Because we all want to look our best and be our best as we're heading out in the world. And, we're always taking care of our face and our underarms and all of this stuff. But, we also have our balls, let's just say it, okay? Sometimes they could get a little, like, not unkempt. The area around there could not smell that great. And Manscaped, has basically got you covered. They sent us the Performance Package 4.0, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. Let me get that here. It's like... get this thing out. Okay, this trimmer, it's like really looks cool. Okay, it comes, it's like one of these high-tech razors that it comes with a charging stand. It's all cool. And you could use it. Obviously, you could use it for your nose or beard, but it's specifically designed for your pubes, and it'll keep them looking nice. Also, they have other cool stuff in the package that I really like. There's this deodorant, this ball deodorant that, we always are putting deodorant under our arms to make it, that smell nice. But what about the rest of our body? There's a really other smelly potential place. You use this ball deodorant at the start of the day, you're going to be all clean and smooth down there, okay? And fresh. Plus, they even have this spray that comes in this package. The, what's this called here? The Crop Reviver. You spray that for a little, touch up, maybe before you're going to go out for a night. So this box, this performance package from Manscaped is great. And we've got an offer for anyone who wants to get in on this great offer, because you can get 20% off this performance package from Manscaped plus free shipping if you use the code KEEPING at manscaped.com. So this is a new sponsor of the podcast. If you want to support us and you want to try out these cool products from Manscaped, just go to manscaped.com, use the offer code KEEPING. Try it out. I think you're going to like it. I like it. Okay. My wife likes it. So all good. All right, is that good? Is that a good ad?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you did mention that you could use it on your beard or your nose, and then I just wanted to clarify that you should wash it
Oh,
between
you could say that on the. Well,
if you're
say that actually on the show. That's funny, and then we'll transition from there.
uh
Or do you not want to?
okay.
Or no,
Yeah.
for whatever. So I'll just keep
No,
going.
it's okay. I'm just figuring out how to come in here. Wow. Well, how could you not after that shining endorsement from Elon Dabrowski? Again, manscaped.com, 20% off with free shipping if you use our code keeping. Just keep in mind, Elon recommended that you could use it for your face and nose too. Just wash it in between locations that you use it, please.
Yeah, this lawnmower trimmer. Yeah, wash between every single location. That's a good idea. All right, so Brian, here we go. Let's get back to the show. No more breaks until the end, and we've still got so much to talk about. So, since everyone I've talked about on the Kings, we were before on LA, and pretty much all of LA is just people who have always been on LA. I guess except for like there's Arvidsson who was on Nashville last year. Nashville has this huge game today. I wasn't planning on talking about them, but yeah, take a look at all the available Nashville players because maybe this team's gonna be able to score some goals this year. But yeah, so I don't really have a transition from the Kings to get to this next team I want to talk about, but how about let's do this? One reason I added Sean Walker to my cupful team was because I decided I was going to cut bait on Tyson Barrie and try to flip him while he still has some value. So I'm very curious to get your updated stance on Tyson Barrie. I traded him, by the way, for Taylor Hall, who that was to Ben, but then we have a thing in the cupful, a mechanism called the counter offer mechanism, where within 24 hours someone could send a counter offer, and then I ended up getting Marchessault offered to me. I decided I prefer Marchessault to Hall, so in the end the deal was Tyson Barrie for Jonathan Marchessault, and I've got Walker and I've got like Shattenkirk, whatever. I've got some other like lower level defensemen to shore up my D, and I'm just happy to get rid of Barrie because I'm so nervous about him. Brian, he's like obviously not having a great season on the score sheet. Yeah, he had 2 assists a couple of games ago, but then after that, in the most recent game on Friday, Coach Tippett replaced Barrie with Evan Bouchard on the top pairing with Nurse, and he also gave Nurse a higher share of the power play time. Barrie ended this last game with only 14 minutes and 40 seconds of ice time, no shots, of course, no points for the 4th time in 5th games as an Oiler this season. So, no shots, no points. That was Barrie's obviously 4th no points game of the season out of the 5. And that's on an Oilers team that's scoring like 5+ goals a game every single game. And somehow Tyson Barrie hasn't been getting it on any of them. And it's obviously because this ice time has just been going down. I'm reading on Twitter, I just like would search for Tyson Barrie and read about all the fans just being like, how is this guy still on the team? This guy's terrible. I like every single, like, seems like every shift Barrie's making a mistake that's causing Twitter to blow up. And obviously Coach Tippett is starting to, I don't know, either follow Twitter or just like watch the games himself. And because like I said, in this last game, the ice time went down. Obviously this could be a total blip and he could go back to being on the top pair and go back to getting like all that power play time and go back to being like one of the highest scoring defensemen in the league like last year. I personally just got too nervous. I didn't want to have the stress of having to watch every single game, wait for that tweet on Game Day Lines saying that he's going to be healthy scratched for a game because now they have Bouchard, who they like better in the lineup, and they don't need Barrie anymore. So Brian, did I overreact here? Should I have held on to Barrie? Did I sell too low, sending him off for Marchessault? Or are you agreeing with me that he's starting to look like a bit of a risk and people who have him may want to cut bait before it's too late? Because last year, by the way, I'm really traumatized, right? Because last year I had Taylor Hall, who I drafted pretty high, and he had a really slow start to the season in Buffalo. And then, I was stressed out and people were trying to take advantage of my stress and send me low ball offers for Taylor Hall that I rejected because I'm not going to just trade Taylor Hall for this guy. Then like a couple months later, I was like, man, I really should have accepted those trades. All these players are doing so much better than Taylor Hall still. And I ended up trading him for nothing, pennies on the dollar. So I worry that this is where we're at currently with Tyson Barrie, but feel free to talk all the other Tyson Barrie managers off the ledge. Obviously it's too late for me.
Yeah, well, you had Taylor Hall and Mika Zibanejad, so you really went through a lot last year trying to avoid the worst case scenarios with both those guys. And I don't know if you'd say you made it out alive from that or not, but Tyson, so I can't blame you for wanting to get out from under Tyson Barrie early, who, yeah, has not looked good. He's lost a lot of ice at 5-on-5, mostly because of that one big benching. But even when he is on the ice, Tyson Barrie is not shooting as much as he's used to shooting. And that's something I would like to see Tyson Barrie do, is shoot how much he used to. I like it when Tyson Barrie is involved and engaged in the office. I like it when Tyson Barrie is involved and engaged in the offense. And when I see a guy like him shooting less, I'm honestly wondering, like, what are you doing, Tyson Barrie? If you're not shooting, you're also likely not playing very good defense. And here we're in a situation now where Tyson Barrie is in danger of being Yandled, right? Remember last season where Keith Yandle was just so poor defensively? He ended up just getting this top power play deployment, and even that was tenuous at times, and which is weird, right? Because Edmonton saw what they saw last year from Tyson Barrie and then extended him. But maybe this is like, hey, if we're going to do this for another 3 years, Tyson, this is what we need you to do, and what is and is not acceptable for you during this contract. The thing is that I feel like it's too late for that. You had your chance to work with Tyson Barrie on his defensive lapses, and if you don't like them, I think your choice is to live with them or leave him, which is, I guess, the latter is what the Oilers have tried to do early on. I mean, I think 4 games in is definitely too soon to hit the eject button on the guy slated to play the top power play with McDavid and Draisaitl, who's coming off a 70-point pace season. You're right, though, Elon, there are red flags that we should still be keeping an eye on, though. Even if we're not writing him off yet, there is risk there, and it's up to you how much to tolerate. Like, you traded him for Taylor Hall initially, and I think you did well getting Hall. Hall was drafted 40 spots later on average in our Cupful ADP, but we didn't know then that Hall would be a regular on the top power play, or he probably would have gone a little earlier. You could lose in a deal where you go Barrie for Taylor Hall, but you mitigated risk. This is what we talked about at the top of the show, right? You took a small downgrade from what we'd expect Tyson Barrie to be, instead of waiting for a potentially bigger downgrade by just holding Barrie and seeing the worst case play out. I still expect Barrie overall, like if I had him, I would be giving him more time, but of course, the more time you give him, the more you risk his value going down to zilch. I would hope this benching is a learning opportunity, but I don't know. He's been around a long time and has probably been, good to have tried to teach him a lot. I'm hopeful Barrie and the Oilers can get back on track and on the same page, but it is concerning, and anybody who has Barrie on their roster needs to be worried. And he's also not someone I'm super excited to buy low on. I'm okay to just like miss out if Barrie recovers, and I won't be like, oh, I should have bought low. I'll be like, no, I think I was right to hold off.
Yeah, definitely, to be clear, like, I'm not saying that people who have Barrie should, like, drop him, right? Like, I agree with you that I would definitely give him more rope. It was more for me, like you said, like, just about, like, trying to get something good for him as opposed to waiting and potentially not getting something good. But I definitely see a scenario where, like you say, he learns his lessons and he gets back to doing what he did last year. Of course, last year, Evan Bouchard wasn't there. And Evan Bouchard, by the way, having a nice start to the year. 5 points in 3 games, seeing over 20 minutes per game, which is 6 minutes more than Barrie saw in the last game. So it's just another player that Barrie has to contend with for that roster spot. So good for people who keep Barrie, and honestly to Jordan, who now has Barrie. Like, good luck. I hope he works out for you, and I hope Marchessault works out for me. We'll actually talk about Marchessault in a little bit, because he's actually pointless to start the year also, but obviously he's at least getting the shots in the deployment. But yeah, good luck to Barrie and his guys. And yeah, let's switch over to the team that Barrie was benched. Oh, so good luck to all those guys.
I thought I was going to talk about Evan Bouchard.
Oh, okay. So let me just even say good luck to all those guys. And yeah, Brian, I guess I brought up Evan Bouchard. What do you think about this guy? Are you with me that he's like, I don't know, I don't think he's like a super enticing grab right now, but definitely someone that I have my eye on. Obviously in dynasty leagues, you want to look at him. Maybe he's the future top power play quarterback. Right now it's Nurse or Barrie for the foreseeable future, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and Evan Bouchard is arguably the guy who should be taking this mantle. Low Tide Alan Mitchell, who we interviewed for our 32 Beat series, called him Edmonton's secret weapon going into this year. And we liked what we saw from Evan Bouchard last year in small spurts. His opportunities were, we mentioned this at the time, were incomprehensibly limited given what we thought was Edmonton's need for a player like Bouchard, who could move the puck, who needed some reps to grow and was learning how to be defensively responsible, like a better version of Tyson Barrie, but he couldn't even get in the lineup consistently last year. And when he did, Bouchard was often limited to fewer than 12 minutes, which is why I'm surprised and refreshed to see Bouchard playing 17, 18, 19, 22, 24 minutes this year so far in each of his games. It's not like the Oilers to actually give young, versatile defenseman this kind of opportunity. So it means something. I think that they're giving it to Evan Bouchard. Great shot numbers. He occasionally contributes to other peripheral categories. He is a great player to be keeping an eye on. if Tyson Barrie continues to fall out of favor. I'm not going to say he's like Aaron Ekblad. There's too many differences between them. But in the Yandel analogy, I think Bouchard is the Ekblad. He's the one who stands to gain the most if Barrie does find himself exiled from all the best scoring opportunities.
Yeah, okay. So obviously this is like too early. We'll have to wait and see, but it's a stressful situation if you've got Barrie. I'll just say that, and I guess I'm not stressed anymore. Though obviously, if I see Barrie do well, like I said, I'll be happy. I'll be happy for Jordan and the people who held on to Barrie, as long as Jonathan Marchessault does well for me. So let's go to Marchessault next, because it was actually Vegas. That's the team who Barrie got benched against, and unfortunately for Vegas, they have not been able to survive as well after the loss of their two big stars in Stone and Pacioretty, compared to like Pittsburgh, who I mentioned before, beat the Leafs 7-1 without all their stars. Vegas have lost 3 in a row after winning the season opener versus the Kraken. Last week, Brian, when we talked about Pacioretty and Stone being injured, you suggested that maybe this could potentially be good news for that misfit line, Marchessault, Karlsson, and Smith, because they'll see a bigger role, maybe more power play time. So far, that has not come to pass, especially for Marchessault, who's gone pointless in 3 straight games after scoring in the season opener. Brian, do you have a concern about Marchessault at this point after these past 3 games, or do you see now or soon as like a potential buy low time on a guy who put up a 60-point pace, potential buy low time on a guy who put up a 66-point pace last season?
I think I'm sort of in between, because when you're going by Marchessault's pace last season, I think 66 points was a touch high for him. So if you're looking at him closer to 60 points, then that's a great place to acquire Jonathan Marchessault. And I think he'll get back there too. So far this season, he has no assists at 5-on-5, which is partially because his team is barely scoring with him on the ice. The Golden Knights are shooting 5.5% at 5-on-5 with Marchessault on the ice. And only 2 goals have been scored with Marchessault on the ice, and one was by him, and he did not get an assist on the other. I think Marchessault's line is also looking like they've been on their heels more than usual, and I wonder if that's because of Stone and Pacioretty being out, and they've had to take on sort of a bigger responsibility. I'm not going to get too caught up in it, but it is a thought, at least. Remember last week I said I thought maybe Stone and Pacioretty might help Marchessault. It looks like that, like you were like, I think them being injured will let other teams key in on his line more, and your take seemed to be right there. It's sad to see Marchessault be so quiet early, but everything I'm looking at tells me he should be mostly okay. And of course, we might need to see Stone and Pacioretty return for Marchessault to get all the way back up to a 60-point pace, but I expect him to get there one way or the other.
Yeah, I guess keep on shooting, Marchessault, and I'll hope that some of those shots start going in eventually. But yeah, things aren't looking great for Vegas. Like I said, Robin Lehner, we already talked about, 1-3, 901 save percentage, only 1 quality start so far in his 4 games, according to Frozen Tools. So I guess we already discussed this. But yeah, Lehner, if you still believe in him, now would be a good time to get him. I think this is the cheapest price, as long as the Lehner manager isn't Brian, who is not going to let go of someone that they drafted really high. I think now could be a good buy low opportunity for a lot of people, but again, there's risk here, right? I don't think he's like a sure thing. He's not like even a Marner to me. He's a little bit below that because it's a goalie. And also, we've never really seen Lehner be in the situation of being a starting goalie, like a sure shot starter that's playing a ton of games. He usually has another goalie to take a lot of games, and he really shines in the games he gets. So it's a big season for Lehner. I guess, though, he has the contract under his belt. So either way, he's fine financially, but obviously he wants to prove to everyone that he's worth the money he's getting. He's a really solid starter in the league. Not a great start, but it's only 4 games in. Okay, I'll just keep going then. Okay. Do you hear that siren? Shot. Joel here is like in love with Barrie, by the way, which is great.
Well, no, I think it's a reasonable response. Like, it sounded like you have cut bait, and I was like trying to support your decision. But we like, and right at the start, I started by saying like it would be crazy if Barrie did disappear and wasn't worth what he's been worth last year, and then I went into all the reasons why maybe we should be concerned. So that's the last thing.
That's fair. Yeah. And obviously, Joel, it's just like, I just want to be able to sleep at night, but I agree with you that it definitely could just turn out that he's as good as last year. Like, I definitely am open to that possibility. Okay.
You want to be able to sleep at night, yet turn on your alarm to wake up at 3 a.m. peacefully.
Well, sometimes I don't go to bed until 3, so it's not setting an alarm.
Wow.
Okay. Of course, speaking of Marchessault, there was once upon a time when Marchessault was just a middling guy over on the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Tampa is our next stop, Brian, to talk about Eric Cernak, who has been a peripherals beast so far this season, especially in Saturday's loss to Tampa. Who did they lose to? Why did I write that? Who did Tampa lose to? They didn't lose to Tampa. Oh, to Colorado.
Colorado.
Saturday's lost to. Sorry, everybody.
Clumsy live recording today. How's everyone doing in the chat?
Hopefully they're having fun. Okay. Of course, speaking of Marsh, so once upon a time, he was just a middling guy over on the Tampa Bay Lightning before he went to Florida and then Vegas, where he blossomed into a star. And Tampa is our next stop, okay? Because we're going to talk about another peripherals guy. We've already talked about Sean Walker. Let's throw another one at the listeners. And Eric Cernak, who has been a peripherals beast so far this season, especially in Saturday's loss to Colorado, where Cernak had 7 shots and 7 hits in his 21 minutes and a half of ice time, including 5 minutes of shorthanded times. That's a lot of time to stand there and I guess make hits and even block some shots. Cernak is now, by the way, up to 19 shots on the season in only 5 games, along with his 17 hits. He has 2 assists so far, so he hasn't been huge offensively. But in your multi-category leagues, this is a pretty solid bet if he's going to continue to give you these huge shot and hit numbers. Tampa, by the way, has a nice schedule to start next week. They play Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So if you need a D in your bangers leagues, seems like a good short-term ad at the least. But also, if he keeps shooting like this, got to imagine a few pucks will start going in, and maybe he's even better. So we'll have to wait and see. Brian, just curious, from what you've seen from Cernak so far this season, do you think that he's like better than what you thought of him last year? Has he potentially been elevated to past streamer status and someone that you potentially want to hold? Or do you see this as just like a really hot peripheral start? It's always hard. Like, I feel like we have all of these ways of determining if players' production is sustainable for like goals and assists. I know you're looking at the on-ice shooting percentage and like different kind of advanced stats. I don't really know how to tell if like shots and hits are as sustainable. So I'm curious to know what you think of this hot peripheral start for Cernak.
I am loving the fact that Eric Cernak, of all the guys to double their usual shot rates early on, Eric Cernak was not someone I had on my list. But here we are, where Cernak's 5-on-5 shot rates, he's averaging 13 shots per 60 minutes. That's better than what we see from high shooting forwards. Like right now, of all forwards who've played at least 60 minutes, of all skaters who've played at least 60 minutes at 5-on-5 this season, Eric Cernak ranks 3rd in shots per 60. And if you take that threshold down to like 50 minutes or more, he's still a top 10 shooter in the NHL. Eric Cernak, he's one of 4 defensemen within the top 30-35, including Matt Dumba, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and your boy Sean Walker. Eric Cernak's hits have held steady, which is nice. His blocks have gone a little low. So as for the shots, though, which is really what we're looking at to see, hey, is this something that's going to hold? Keep an eye on our Twitter, because I wrote our beat writer friend Joe Smith, who writes for The Athletic, who's the Tampa Bay beat writer there. And so I'm waiting on a response. And when Joe writes back, I am going to retweet it. But we did have a helpful response from Michael G, who said that, Cernak is just getting more comfortable. Like the Lightning like to push their D into the rush. And Cernak is getting more comfortable doing that. And that they've also been working on as a team, trying to hit the net through traffic from the point. And I trust Michael G because his avatar on Twitter is like the Tampa Bay Lightning logo. So
expert.
Yeah, expert on the team. So thank you, Michael, for those responses. And it makes sense, right? Cernak is more engaged. Obviously, he's being coached to be more engaged. If you're asking me if he's ascended beyond streamer status, I think the answer is similar to Sean Walker, right? If Cernak keeps up these shots on goal, then yeah, if his shots and hits make him someone really helpful, like if those elevate him to like a Radko Gudas type who is worth rostering in a lot of leagues at his peak, then yeah, Eric Cernak is worth rostering. But still, when it comes to production, don't expect to see much more than, I think you're lucky if you see 35 points from Cernak, even with all these shots. That's probably the high end for him. I'd probably have him somewhere between 30 and 35 points. If you're going for him, you're going for the shots, you're going for the hits, you're going for the occasional block, and the very occasional point.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Ryan Graves a couple of years ago in Colorado. He was taking a lot of shots. Not too many were going in, but it was still pretty valuable to roster for a little while. Just drop him once these shots slow down, like you said. So like we said, Tampa Bay plays Monday and Tuesday next week. Maybe you want to take a look in a deeper league of Corey Perry. He's been on the top power play, at least in the last game. He took 4 shots in that game. Still pointless on the season. Could be another decent early week ad. But the real reason why I bring up Corey Perry is because I want to jump over to his previous team, the Montreal Canadiens, who finally scored some goals and got into the win column with a 6-1 win over the Red Wings on Saturday. Unfortunately, I guess half of those goals came from someone on nobody's fantasy rosters in former Keeping Karlsson legend Matthew Perrault, one of Brian's first ever hot takes on the show that I recall really turning out well was him telling people when Matthew Perrault was on Winnipeg, like, check out this guy Perrault, he's about to, be big. And then like the next 2 weeks he had like a torrid run of like scoring goals every single game, and it was like, wow, Brian really knows his stuff. What a genius. So Perrault's still around. I don't even know how many people realize that he's even on the Habs this year outside of Habs fans. But yeah, he had a huge game on Saturday, a hat trick, 6 shots. What a game. Okay, he joined Elias Lindholm and David Perron for a hat trick of hat tricks last night in the NHL. So Perrault was actually playing on a new look third line with Toffoli and Caulfield, who each assisted on his second goal. So this wasn't like Perrault just being some fourth liner who just somehow lucked into some goals. Like, he's getting good deployment with good players. So he's obviously someone to at least have on our radars. But with these line shakeups, it's interesting, right? They have Anderson, Drouin, and Dvorak, who've stayed together basically the whole season. And then Nick Suzuki was centering a line of Gallagher and Hoffman. Brian, like, it's weird how Montreal has so much trouble scoring. Like, this looks like a really kind of stacked top 9 with lots of good players who you expect to be able to put up points. So hopefully these lines continue to click, because the Habs could definitely use some more games like this in their Western road trip that's coming up next week. So yeah, while Perrault maybe has some intrigue in the deepest of deep leagues, let's talk about 2 of the Habs that were drafted really highly in leagues that somehow still went pointless yesterday. Like Nick Suzuki. The Habs scored 6 goals. Nick Suzuki, no points and no shots versus Detroit. And he actually hasn't taken more than 1 shot in any game since the season opener this year. He has just 1 assist in 6 games now. This is a guy who had a 60-point pace last year as a sophomore and is now doing diddly. And then I'll bring up another player. So that was Suzuki. Then you've got Jeff Petrie, who still has no points in his 6 games and has also been slacking in the shot department. None on Saturday. Only 5 in 5 games since the opener. I can't imagine how frustrating it must be to be a Petrie manager and see him do nothing, especially while Sami Niku picked up 2 assists, including 1 from, I guess, the second power play or the power play 2B yesterday. Like, you want to be like, no, I took Petrie because I knew that Weber was going to be gone and he's going to be the main person that the Habs are going to depend on to be a power play quarterback. I don't want Sami Niku taking all these power play points. So yeah, Petrie was drafted 58th on average in the cupful, with many, myself included, thinking he was going to be money this year. So it's not working out. So Brian, what do you think people should do with these high-end Habs in Suzuki and Petrie? Is it time to consider dropping these guys? Do you wait and give them more time? Do you try to sell like I did with Tyson Barrie, get something for them before, their stock really falls? Or obviously the more bright answer would be that just they're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Now the Habs have started scoring. Maybe things will start to turn around for them.
Well, the Habs have started scoring, but it doesn't help anybody who's holding on to Nick Suzuki or Jeff Petrie. But I think we talked about this on the Patron cast. Elon, I know in a shallow league, you could for sure be tempted to drop these guys. But my answer is that when we see a whole team struggling, I don't get hung up on individual performances. I'm not saying, well, all of Montreal is struggling, so Nick Suzuki is going to have a terrible season. If all of Montreal was doing well and Nick Suzuki wasn't, yeah, I'd be like, well, I'm kind of worried about Nick Suzuki's fortunes, but they just finally broke open the scoring last game, and Mathieu Perrault did it single-handedly with his natural hat trick. I think it's really unfortunate and definitely below what we expected coming into the year with what the Habs have done overall in scoring. And Petrie and Suzuki themselves, they have yet to actually be on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal. Petrie's also lost 30 seconds of ice time a night. Suzuki has lost 80 seconds of ice time a night. Both are shooting at half the usual rate. So there's a lot of reason to actually be concerned. But as I think we said on the show 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Habs are a team in flux. They've lost or are missing some really, really key pieces. And I think this is a moment to just be patient about them. Like if you have Jeff Petrie, I'm sorry, that's rough. If you have Nick Suzuki, I'm sorry, that's rough too. I don't think you can cut them if your league isn't too shallow. I doubt you can recoup much trade value for them either at this point. So right now, you as a Petrie or Suzuki manager are just looking to the next week or two and seeing, okay, as Montreal gets on their feet, which I hope they will, what are Suzuki and Petrie doing then?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Montreal has a good schedule next week at least, right? So you get your Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday slate against Seattle, San Jose, LA, and Anaheim. Hard to tell, like San Jose and Seattle should be like easy-ish games, but San Jose's obviously been really good, that they got blown out these last games. So I don't know. Anyway, we'll see how the Habs do this week, and then maybe we can reassess. Not that we're going to bring up the Habs every week on the podcast, but I think this is like a big week for people who have Suzuki. With Petrie, I feel like you just got to hold him while he's the top power play quarterback, right? But Suzuki, definitely I would want to see how he does this week, especially if they're running this top 9. All 3 lines look pretty good. Maybe Suzuki isn't the straw that stirs the drink, as I kind of thought he would be going into the season. I thought it was going to be like Suzuki, Caulfield, and Toffoli. That would be the scoring line, and then everyone else would just be like, I don't know, playing well defensively or something. But who knows what's going to happen now with the lines all shaken up. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, give another week, like Brian's saying. Brian's maybe saying even to give him longer, but I'm at least saying give him one more week and then let's reassess. Okay, so one interesting to note. Okay. Oh yeah, they beat Detroit. That's why. Okay, one interesting note. So yeah, like we're saying, let's give him one more week and then we can reassess. But yeah, not great for the Habs, but hopefully things are about to turn around after that win against Detroit. By the way, one interesting note from that Detroit game was that Filip Hronek was scratched after only managing 1 assist in his first 4 games. Looks like he was scratched again, Brian, for today's game that the Red Wings played against Chicago. So at this point, we're in total snoozer status for Filip Hronek, right? He's still rostered in 27% of leagues on Yahoo. So maybe people have already pretty much gotten the message, and these 27% of leagues are already like leagues where the managers have just disappeared. So maybe I'm talking into a void here, but if you happen to have Hronek on your team still, get rid of him. Forget it. It's not happening. I'd rather have Leddy or Seider, who are both doing better. Like Hronek is maybe the 3rd best defenseman to own on the team in fantasy right now.
Yeah, and don't forget that Nick Leddy, by the way, 4 points in 5 games. He's gotten so little play for what he's doing. Maybe that's because Nick Leddy also does absolutely nothing else still, but he does have this. I don't know if anyone remembers, because of course he's been with the Islanders for so long, but when he was drafted by Chicago and then traded to the Islanders, he had this pedigree as being an offensive defenseman, someone like who's a smooth skater, can make good passes, can quarterback a power play, and here he is doing it because Filip Hronek is not. He is definitely a snoozer. Maybe the benching is a good sign in the long run. Like, hey, we're gonna get some things straight. But short term, I don't think Hronek is on the verge of having a huge year quarterbacking the top power play. He hasn't been able to earn that spot to this point when there was less competition, and now he's having trouble even getting into a game. So Filip Hronek is someone that you should be, you're snoozing on if he's still on your lineup.
Yeah, you could find someone else better for sure, maybe even on the same team. So speaking of Leddy, his former team, the Islanders, have been shaking up their lines quite a bit, just like the Habs. All preseason, we were talking about, will it be Palmieri or Wahlstrom on the top line? Because that's what Trotz told us, right? He said it's going to be one of them that end up as the top line winger with Barzal and Lee. But in Saturday's game, they already went in a different direction for the shutout win over the Coyotes, as it was Josh Bailey playing with Barzal and Lee on the top line. Then it was Brock Nelson with Palmieri and Beauvillier on the second line, then Wahlstrom, Peugeot, and Parise on the third line. So not exactly sure what the takeaway is here, since things could keep shifting. Aside from that, it's probably not worth getting too attached to any forward not named Barzal and maybe Anders Lee on this team, especially with, like we said in the intro of the show, Islanders only play 1 game next week on Saturday, so you might not even have room for the player when they do play. So I kind of feel like you could drop every single Islanders forward outside of Barzal and maybe Anders Lee. Like, I wouldn't be holding on to Palmieri. I wouldn't be holding on to Nelson. Obviously, it depends how deep your league is, but assuming this is a league like the Cupful and you could stream in someone who's somewhat decent, I don't see a reason to hold any of these guys, because it doesn't even seem like anyone's a sure thing to stick with good deployment. It might just be shaking around for a while.
Absolutely agree. In cupful-ish deep leagues or shallower, drop everyone not named Barzal and Lee. If you wanted to drop Anders Lee and no one, like everyone else, is going to sleep on him in your league, I think that's justifiable. But those are the only 2 worth holding, of course, along with Sorokin and Varlamov, who are more painful to hold through this if Varlamov is healthy and they each only play half the games, because the Isles only play 5 times in the next 3 weeks. So just keep an eye on how well. There's nothing you could do. I wouldn't drop Sorokin and Varlamov. I own them. Sorry. There's nothing you can do. I wouldn't drop Sorokin or Varlamov. I have them on a couple rosters, and it's going to hurt, and it might be a rough few weeks, but I'm going to stay the course with them. But I did drop Kyle Palmieri earlier this year with an eye to this week, where the Islanders barely played, knowing that he wasn't going to survive on my roster by the time we got here anyway. Like, after they play, so the Islanders play Saturday, and then they play 4 times between this Saturday and next Saturday. And then their schedule goes dark again, where they play just 1 game in the 8 days after that. It's a brutal time to be holding Islanders, and I empathize with you if you have Barzal, Lee, Sorokin, or Varlamov, because those guys cannot be dropped but the rest can. Don't hold on to Anthony Beauvillier.
Yeah, agreed. By the way, let's just go back to Nick Leddy's current team on Detroit. We should mention, actually, this Detroit team is destroying Chicago right now. Huge game for Bertuzzi, Larkin, and Lucas Raymond. All are having like 3+ point games. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. Also, Moritz Seider. He's great. He's going to be great, Brian. Already another point today as well. So yeah, look at Detroit. I guess they're beating up on the weaker teams, even though they couldn't beat up on Montreal. So it's so hard to predict what's going to happen in the NHL. Like, how is a team? Anyway, yeah, Detroit doing well today. And anyone who held on to Lucas Raymond, very happy right now because he's having a huge night. But okay, so still back to the Islanders. That was only the forwards that you were talking about. Then, Brian, you talked about their goalies. But also on D, we should mention Noah Dobson looking pretty good. He has a season. Noah Dobson looking pretty good. He's got assists in each of his last 2 games, including a power play assist from the top power play versus Arizona on Saturday. He also took 4 shots and had 3 blocks in that last game. I feel like at this point, Noah Dobson may be approaching the territory of being a defenseman on the Islanders who's actually worth rostering for a full season, even just for the offense, which like hasn't been the case in forever. Like, yeah, Ryan Pulock has been there, and Pulock is like really good for peripherals. He's had solid hits and blocks all season. Unfortunately, the offense just hasn't been there at all this year so far. Less than 2 shots per game, no points. So Pulock is another guy that it would be tough to decide whether to hold or not. Obviously depends on how valuable the hits and blocks are in your league. But Noah Dobson, I don't know. Yeah, he's maybe if you could like drop him and get him back after this week schedule a little bit, or maybe like watch if an opponent in your league drops Dobson because they don't want to hold him for this bad schedule. But I have my eye on this guy. He seems like he could be the best Islanders defenseman to roster in fantasy in a long time. So we'll have to wait and see, but it's a good start.
Yeah, which isn't saying much. It's been a low bar to clear for Noah Dobson to become the most valuable Isles defenseman in a long time. I'm still, honestly, I know you're into him. I know Ben's into him. I'm just not that into him. He barely shoots. He occasionally gets a point. He's on a power play unit that is likely, like so far he's seeing 60% of the power play time. But I think that unit, if the Isles continue rolling their units as they have in the past couple of years with Barry Trotz, he's still only going to see half the power play time. So Dobson is also someone that I would drop going into this week, unless you're really, really starved and desperate for defense. Then I guess you can hold him. But I am not. I'm not big. I agree with you, Elon, that maybe he's going to have one of the better point totals we've seen from an Isles defenseman. But again, the bar is so low that it doesn't even necessarily mean he's rosterable if he's doing so little of anything else in any other category.
Yeah, that's totally fair. He did take 4 shots in the last game, but you're right. Before that, he was having 1 or 0 shots in all the rest of the game. So come on, Dobson. Hopefully he's taking notes from that game versus the Coyotes, and he'll like continue to do what he was doing in that game, because that would obviously make a big difference if he becomes more of a volume shooter. All right, so another non-offense but stable guy on the Isles is, of course, JG Pageau. When I say another, I mean just like Ryan Pulock. So let's go over to Pageau's former team in Ottawa, where Brady Tkachuk is back. So far has only 1 assist in his 2 games, but 6 shots and 12 hits in those 2 games. So Brady helping you in all the categories you expected, except unfortunately for goals. Hopefully pucks will start going in for him next week to justify his being drafted so high all over going to the season. Brian, you, I know, drafted Brady Tkachuk in the cupful. I assume you're not concerned that he hasn't scored a goal yet. It's only 2 games, right?
I am not concerned at all. Brady Tkachuk missed camp. He's catching up. Let's cut him some slack. The shots and hits are coming. That's all I want to see. I mean, I would love to see the full package here. But for now, hey, Brady, just get in the game. I'm glad you're in it. And then hopefully before long, we start seeing that 60-ish point pace worth of points that we hope to see from Tkachuk, that starts coming shortly. I think it will. I don't think he's going to need a whole lot of time to catch up, but I don't think it's anything worth panicking about in his first couple games after, having missed camp, having not been able to work out with the team, that he's just getting into things here.
Yeah, I'm not worried at all, definitely. The thing to be worried about in Ottawa is that their expensive goalie, Matt Murray, is injured once again, and maybe this one isn't his fault. He took a knee to the head from Kreider after a goal. Obviously, we're wishing Matt Murray the best. I hope he'll get well soon. But in the meantime, back on the IR for Matt Murray, Anton Forsberg came in and led in 2 goals on 3 shots in that game versus the Rangers, and the Rangers came back to win 3-2. So, Brian, if Murray is out long-term, how interested are you in jumping on an Ottawa goalie that is very likely in free agency right now, be it Anton Forsberg or Philip Gustafsson, who really has been so good in his limited NHL action? Like, I wonder if Murray's out long-term, I don't think it would take too long for Gustafsson to become the starter, though you never know. Ottawa might just go 50-50, but I would be into Gustafsson at least as a stream whenever he plays, because he's looked really good.
Yeah, and Ottawa is not as scary a team to stream a goalie start from as they have been in the past. So that's a reason to be a little bit into Anton Forsberg and Philip Gustafsson. I could see them both splitting starts while Murray is out, and Murray could be out a while, right? Like the poor guy has a concussion history. I think it was a knee to the head. So I'm not expecting to see Murray back anytime soon. So in that time, maybe if Gustafsson or Forsberg, one of them gets hot, maybe the team will go with a hot hand. But I don't think if you're looking, planning ahead for the next couple of weeks, I'm not sure I see any guy above a streamer just because I don't think anyone is going to run away with the top job. You also have to be ready for, it still could be an ugly start. It's not much different than putting Matt Murray in your crease and if you're putting Anton Forsberg or Philip Gustafsson in your crease. So keep that in mind, but I will be looking to them for streams when the Sens play, and I need points. If I'm already in a comfortable position, I might decide to let that stream sit and not actually go for it. But if I need to catch up or I need some counting stats, I'm going for it. We've seen both of them play well this year already, and in recent history before this year too. I would like to see more of each. I think this is a good opportunity to get a real good look at them.
Yeah, and hey, Ottawa, now Brady Tkachuk is back, right? So this team should be better even than they were, earlier in the season, now that they have their superstar player back. So who knows? At some point, Ottawa's going to get to be a better team. Like last year, they ended really strong, so I'm curious to see what they'll do once everyone's healthy. So yeah, I like those Ottawa streamers, but like you say, it's hard to, land on one of them and hold them because you don't know who's going to get the starts. Obviously, if one of them starts running away with the starts, that's where you want to maybe grab that guy because you're going to potentially get volume, lots of saves, hopefully good numbers, but obviously depends on the opponents also. Though unfortunately, they're not fully healthy, even forgetting about Murray, because also Shane Pinto was injured, and he was centering that second line. He was a heralded prospect. We were excited to see what he'll do this season. Unfortunately, he's going to be out for a little while. So this guy named Nick Paul has been centering line two with Connor Brown and Jimmy Stutzla. And Paul scored a goal yesterday, assisted by those line mates that I just mentioned. So there you go. Some more names to keep in mind if you want to stream in some Ottawa players. They have another bad schedule next week. I think they only play Wednesday and Friday or Monday. I don't know what it is. It's only 2 games next week. So unfortunately for Ottawa and people who have Ottawa players on their teams, they haven't been getting a lot of games. But after that, maybe take a look at these depth Ottawa guys. There's another depth Ottawa guy named Zach Sanford who used to be on St. Louis. And so let's go to St. Louis next, where I'd like to mention David Perron, who's been outstanding to start the season. He was getting a point per game, and then he just popped off for 3 goals and 1 assist on Saturday versus LA. Brian, this was something that we can say we got right going into the season. Maybe this wasn't even a hot take. It felt like to us, every year we're there's no way Perron's going to be this good. But then going into this season, we were no, Perron is for real. What he's been doing is something that we can depend on year after year. And he had over a point per game last year. He's well on track to do that again this year, or at least come close. So great start for David Perron on that top line with O'Reilly. The third piece on that line was normally Brandon Saad, but he's in COVID protocol. So I'll quickly mention Klim Kostin, who was playing on that line with O'Reilly and Perron on that game versus LA on Saturday, and he picked up an assist to go along with his 4 hits. So we've got now 2 goals, 1 assist, 6 shots, and 12 hits in 3 games now for Klim Kostin. So maybe a good option to stream in on Monday versus LA for the rematch if Saad is still out. Brian, who is Klim Kostin? Is he someone you would be interested in streaming in while he's in this good spot, especially in a league that counts hits?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in streaming Klim Kostin in this spot. We streamed the aforementioned Zach Sanford, who, by the way, is good friends with Colin White, if you're keeping your Ottawa Senators friends map intact. But yeah, we've streamed in Zach Sanford, Sammy Blaze, Jordan Kyrou, and Klim Kostin in this spot because it can be a pretty good spot to produce from. Not everybody succeeds at it, but Klim Kostin has had a really nice start at doing it. And who is he? He's a former 31st overall first round pick of the Blues back in 2017. He's been, his North American experience has been very limited. He played last season in the KHL and put up 18 points in 43 games. So not the greatest scoring line. And actually, if you look back at his AHL numbers, going into his first NHL Cups of Coffee, he also was not a huge scorer in the AHL either with the San Antonio Rampage. So 3 points in 3 games, a great start for Klim Kostin, but I think he's more of a middle 6 type player. I don't think you're expecting this guy to be a true top 6 talent, but while he's in there putting up points with some of the best players the Blues have to put him with, then you might as well go ahead and stream him if his schedule works for yours.
Yeah, especially if your league counts hits, right? Because he's definitely going to give you a lot of those no matter where he is in the lineup. As long as he gets the minutes, he's going to get them if he's on the top line. Brian, I got to talk about Vladimir Tarasenko, who's getting the third line treatment, but has still come out of the gate with a Oh man, what did I write here? I wish you like commented that everything I wrote made no sense. Okay, who's getting third line treatment, but has still come out strong? I wrote string. What does that mean? He's come out string. All right. And then, Brian, let's talk about Vladimir Tarasenko, who's only getting line 3 treatment on the Blues as opposed to Kostin on line 1 with Saad out, but doesn't matter. Tarasenko has come out super strong. He had 2 power play assists on Saturday versus the Kings, but from power play 1, by the way. So yeah, line 3, but power play 1 is always really helpful. And that brings Tarasenko to 1 goal and 3 assists in 4 games. Plus, how about those shots? 20 shots in 4 games. That's 5 shots per game, which is unbelievable. So Brian, at this point, like, good for Tarasenko, first of all, right? Because he had that rough off season where he was like not even protected in the expansion draft. He asked for a trade, or like they couldn't find a team that even wanted him. Now he's showing people that maybe you should have taken me because I'm still a pretty great player. Brian, what would you do with Tarasenko right now in fantasy? Do you think that he can be the Tarasenko of old, even with this lower time on ice and weaker line mates than usual? And no offense to Thomas and Barbashev, but Tarasenko used to be a top sixer, even a top liner on this team. Now he's on line 3. Or are you expecting like a cool off to come soon? There's no way he can be this like 70-point high shooting guy from his position on the roster.
Well, you mentioned high shooting. We have to give Vladimir Tarasenko credit. He's up above Eric Cernak with his shot rates. That's how many shots per 60 minutes that Vladimir Tarasenko is taking, more than Eric Cernak. But seriously, he's playing possessed early on, and good for Tarasenko for being motivated in what appears to be, this really crummy situation. He's lost nearly 90 seconds a night at 5-on-5. Playing on the third line. Thank goodness he still has those top power play minutes, but in the minutes he is getting at 5-on-5, Tarasenko is making the most of them, more than twice his shot attempt rates than he's used to seeing. It would be crazy, though, for Tarasenko to get his usual 75-point pace from where he's at. Really, he'd need to feast completely on the power play and then make the third line look like the first or second line, which he might be capable of doing, but what I'd rather do if I had Tarasenko on my team, which I don't on any rosters, but if I did, I would be selling high. Even in a perfect situation, I don't know that Tarasenko is capable of beating his signature 75 points. And by that, I mean, even if Tarasenko does get traded away to another team, you're selling low because he's on the third line. But if he gets traded, he could be on a top line. I still don't know if that's going to be a possible scenario for Tarasenko. You go to a new team, there's adjustments to make, maybe you bounce around a little bit in the depth chart. And of course, Tarasenko might not get traded. He could keep spending the season in this less than perfect situation in St. Louis. He just feels like a risky hold since his status is so up in the air. So if you see if you can get your league mates to see that Tarasenko looks like vintage Tarasenko and sell him for that kind of price, absolutely do it. Obviously it goes without saying, sell him for someone like Svechnikov. You probably can't pull that off, but you're looking for somebody who you can for sure rely on 70 points from. And I think in some leagues you'd be able to pull that off. So if you're able to sell high on Tarasenko, I'd love to hear about it. I think that's the move.
Yeah, this is probably a decline, but shoot an offer to the Mitch Marner manager, who might be super frustrated. Be like, would you rather have 5 shots per game or like 1 shot per game? And you're definitely still going to lose, by the way, in terms of shots. But hopefully Marner is going to just like crush him in total points. Yeah, I would definitely make that trade offer, and probably you'll get laughed out of the room, but maybe not based on how the season has started. So yeah, former teammate and line mate of Tarasenko is TJ Oshie. Remember when he was on St. Louis for so long? Now Oshie is in Washington. So let's go there to discuss the Capitals, who after a strong start to the season, they're undefeated in regulation, sitting at 3-0-2 after the 4-3 overtime loss to the Flames on Saturday, where, like I mentioned, Lindholm had that hat trick. So great job to anyone who drafted Lindholm. He's been amazing. But we're on Washington, okay? We've already discussed some of the highs on the Caps over these past couple of weeks. Like that top line of Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, and Wilson are all off to like scorching starts to their season. So I won't once again talk about how great Ovechkin and Kuznetsov are. Let's actually go to the other side of things. Disappointing players on the Caps. I was surprised to see that somehow, with all these goals that Ovechkin and Kuznetsov and company have been scoring, John Karlsson is actually having kind of a disappointing start to the season. Only 2 assists in 5 games and only 5 shots in those 5 games, when he's been above 2.5 shots per game for most of the past few seasons. Also, Karlsson only has 4 blocks when he's usually good for well over 1 per game. And now I'm telling you, like 4 blocks in 5 games. What's going on with John Karlsson, Brian? Like, he's only 31 years old, but maybe should we be concerned that he's starting to regress because of, his age? Like, obviously, like, people start to decline once they get into their 30s. Is there some rule that's happening right now in the league where there's only allowed to be one Karlsson who's doing well? And since Erik Karlsson is having such a great bounce back, John Karlsson has to slow down so that the total Karlsson output is even? Like, I'm just very curious to know why John Karlsson could be doing so poorly when everyone else in Washington is getting all these points. It's just bad luck. He's on the ice and he's just not getting in on the goals.
I'm going to get to John Karlsson, but sorry, before we do, just in St. Louis, quick shout out to Robert Thomas, who's on a 3-game point streak with Tarasenko. He has 4 assists in 3 games, including 1 multi-put outing. He has 4 assists in 3 games, including 1 multi-point outing, but only 2 shots in 4 games, which is just a big LOL. It actually looks like that in the score sheet. There's a 1-0-1-0. So LOLO for Robert Thomas's shot taking. So don't take him for that, but maybe he can keep piling up a few assists alongside Tarasenko. But you wanted to know, Elon, about John Karlsson and what is going on with some crazy Karlsson rule. There's no Karlsson rule in the NHL, but it is sort of funny to see Karlsson's performance this year. It doesn't look normal. It's not something I can just write off by saying, yeah, bad variance. There's a lot of other stuff happening. And here's what some of it is for John Karlsson. First, he's down 80 seconds of ice time a night at 5-on-5. His shot and shot attempt rates have taken a hit at 5-on-5 and on the power play, where he's barely shooting right now. His power play points participation is down too, but honestly, maybe it stays that way if Karlsson doesn't start shooting again. That's how you get involved on the power play, right? You take a big shot, someone deflects it, or there's a rebound. It's a really odd start to the year for John Karlsson. It's something that anybody rostering Karlsson should be keeping an eye on. Like if he's off his game, you're going to want to catch it before anyone else in your league does. And this can't be explained by age. This kind of drop doesn't happen that we're seeing in Karlsson's numbers because you're 31. It happens because you're injured usually, or your coach doesn't like you is another reason, but he has the same coach he's had for all this time. So I wonder if John Karlsson is playing with something. I also put this question out on Twitter. Someone said he had like kneecap surgery, which maybe he's still having a hard time recovering from. He also, I think, is playing with a rookie as a defense partner. Fehervari is the name. It kind of reminds me of February. He scored his first NHL goal recently, but maybe you can't jump up as much with a rookie as you could when you're playing with Dmitry Orlov or Michael Kempny or Brendan Dillon, because you know those guys are going to be there for you. So I wonder if this is maybe just a bit of growing pains for Karlsson and his new D partner as he helps sort of be the more responsible one, or has to be the more responsible one, and shooting less. Either way, Karlsson's low production is not just bad variance. It is cause for some concern. And if you have him on your roster, stay tuned because we're going to be watching this. I have him on one roster, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do about him yet. I'm going to keep watching and hope that it is just he and his D partner getting acclimated and the shots start coming soon. But if they don't, like within this week, I would start maybe shopping him around, or even start now, see what you can get back for him.
Okay, interesting. Wow. So you're saying maybe like I almost was positive. Okay, let me just do the whole thing again. Wow, okay, I was pretty positive that you were going to say don't worry about a small sample size, but okay, you're looking under the hood and seeing some things to be concerned about. I don't know if maybe you want to give it a couple more games before you shop him, unless you're like getting someone really awesome and reliable in return. But yeah, this would be a huge disappointment because Karlsson is someone who's being drafted as one of the top defensemen in fantasy leagues. And maybe a drop is coming. Too bad, but he's still the main go-to guy on the Caps. The good thing is there's not like competition. You don't have to be worried about him losing his spot. Like, we were talking about with Tyson Barrie, there's a lot of people chomping at the bit to take his spot if they could earn it. On Washington, I really can't imagine him losing that top power play or like most of his even strength ice time.
For sure. So that's the silver lining with John Karlsson. That's what you say when you're shopping him around. Hopefully it's someone who hasn't noticed. Like when I say shop him around, I say shop him around for full value before anyone else has really noticed, assuming that not everyone in your league listens to our show because you haven't told them about us. Why won't you tell them about? No, I'm kidding. I understand. But that would be my first move, is to just say, hey, I think I want to trade a D for an elite forward or goalie. and then see if you can get that conversation to go further. If you just want to get away from any John Karlsson risk, everything could be okay, but it very well might be, but I don't like what I'm seeing early on.
Okay, yeah, and only 5 games. So yeah, we'll all obviously be concerned, but also preach caution before doing anything wild. Maybe you tweeted us at Keeping Karlsson, let us know what you're thinking, and then we can send out those trade offers. And yeah, if you could get back a superstar player, get your Steven Stamkos or something, I'll take that. Anyways, while we're at it, these lines without Backstrom have been looking pretty weak for Washington. They've been rolling with like Shiri, Oshie, and rookie Connor McMichael, and then Eller, Mantha, and Sprong. Though I do see that in today's practice lines, Mantha and Oshie were together with Connor McMichael, which could be a fun line, I guess, depending on how good and ready Connor McMichael is. But yeah, Oshie has also not been that great this year, right? Like he's on that top power play, but at even strength, he's not doing much. He's now pointless in 4 games. Oshie, like John Karlsson, is someone obviously at a different level, but Oshie's someone that's been so reliable year in, year out since he's gotten to Washington. And now you have to wonder if maybe TJ Oshie is finally going to take that step back, because he's not 31 like Karlsson. He's a bit older than that. So maybe this is the year, or maybe it's just the kind of thing where once Nicholas Backstrom is back, that'll help, because Oshie's used to having this really good center, and now he doesn't have it. Anyways, are you concerned about Oshie, or is this the kind of thing where just like, slow start it happens?
I'm a little concerned about Oshie. I think he's been left out in the cold with the absence of having a top 6 centerman to play with. But I'm also not too concerned with him, because you look at his variance, and that's why he's not doing well. His team is shooting just 3.5% success rate at 5-on-5 while he's on the ice. And that is translated to seeing less than 1 goal per 60 minutes compared to his usual 3 or more goals per 60 minutes. And when you see that big gap between goals for this year and goals for last year per 60 minutes, you look at expected goals to see, well, should he have been getting more? And that number is pretty healthy for TJ Oshie. His on ice expected goals for rates seem okay. So I wouldn't give up on Oshie completely at 5-on-5, but I might consider him more a 55-ish point pace player until Oshie does get a top 6 centerman back to play with. We can't pretend that it doesn't hurt him to be downgraded from Kuznetsov or Backstrom to Connor McMichael, who looks fine as a rookie, but is not Kuznetsov or Backstrom.
Yeah, at least not yet, that's for sure. Okay, so I want to go do a transition here, and this may be a reach, but okay, there is a guy on Washington named Nick Dowd who scored a goal for them this week, and he's actually a former Vancouver Canuck for like half a season. So let's go to Vancouver to discuss this fully formed team finally with Brock Boeser back. We had a scare, Brian, with line 3 JT Miller in practice, and you said that we're not allowed to talk about JT Miller potentially being on line 3 until we see it happen in a game. I believe it did happen in the game. It doesn't matter, because at least now it seems like the projected lines moving forward are back with JT Miller on the top line playing with Pettersson and Boeser. Though then you look at Saturday's game, and actually Elias Pettersson was swapped off that line in the third period for Justin Dowling. And actually I guess it worked, because the Canucks came back for a 4-2 win in that game, and Dowling even scored a goal at the end assisted by Miller and Boeser. So I definitely don't want to say that, wow, watch out for Elias Pettersson now being in the bottom 6 and Justin Dowling taking over as the top line center on Vancouver. But still, we're kind of in a familiar position right now, as Elias Pettersson has once again started the season slow, just like last year. Only 1 assist and 6 shots in his past 4 games, and now this weird line shakeup thing, like I said, I don't think it's going to stick, but still worth noting for sure. So Brian, would you be nervous? I'm starting to realize that I'm asking you a lot of would you be nervous about this guy? I guess this is more of a cold streaks episode than maybe I realized when I was planning it, but I guess that's the kind of thing you want to ask yourself about and make sure that you're not holding on to people who are not going to be what you expected them to be. And Elias Pettersson, people were expecting big things from him. So yeah, would you be nervous at all with him on your team with this slow start and this weird thing that happened in the third period in the last game? Or is this, again, a classic case where you can potentially get a star player for cheap if someone else has Pettersson and they're nervous because you're 100% positive he's going to be fine?
Yeah, I think this is a really great time to catch a panicking Elias Pettersson. Is it Elias or Elias?
Elias.
Yeah, I think this is such a great time to catch a panicking Elias Pettersson manager. Now, before I go any further, I need to tell you the truth, which is that Pettersson hasn't looked good. He really hasn't. A lot of numbers under the hood for him. He's not generating chances or shots the way he's used to. Yes, there's poor variance. His shooting percentage isn't as high, but there's more cause for concern than just bad variance. But here's the thing with Elias Pettersson, for players of a different ilk, I'd be hemming and hawing and saying maybe this is the sign of bad things to come, as I have about some other players on this episode. There's lots of drops in the numbers that Pettersson controls, even if you excuse that poor variance that accompanies them. Like compare the situation to Suzuki earlier, who's also having a really disappointing start with some slightly concerning underlying numbers. With Suzuki, I was like, yeah, you kind of just have to wait it out and hope it goes well. With Pettersson, I'm saying you don't have to hope. He's going to be fine. Go get Pettersson if you can. He's different. He's amazing. And he's one of those guys in whom I have complete and total faith that is going to find a way to do what he does. And so that's why, like call it a hunch. There's nothing really, compared to all the other red flags I've been bringing up about these other cold streaks you've been raising. There's nothing other than what I feel about Elias Pettersson to tell me that of all of them, he's going to be fine. I don't have to worry about him. If I had Vladimir Tarasenko going off and saw Pettersson struggling, I might try and send that Pettersson manager an offer. I'd go Tarasenko for Pettersson.
Yeah, me too. I'll take Pettersson. Yeah, don't forget, this also happened last year, right? For some reason, he started really slow. Then he started really heating up before, unfortunately, getting injured and missing the end of the season. But yeah, I agree with you. I would have to see like a really long stretch, like 40 plus games of 40 plus games of Pettersson really struggling before I'd be like, oh, maybe he's not as good, because yeah, he's built up such a great reputation with us over the past couple of years. On the flip side, Brian, I'm starting to get a little nervous about having flipped Conor Garland for Martin Necas in the cupful. That was kind of a weird trade that I did, and so far, it's not looking good because Conor Garland has been amazing, right? Like I was a little bit concerned about his low shot on goal rates, but somehow he's still pointing in every single game of the season, including multi-point games in his last 2 to bring him to 3 goals and 5 assists in 6 games on the season. 8 points in 6 games. And this is basically all even strength production, aside from power play assists in the opening game of the season. So, Brian, is Conor Garland really this good? Like, how bad did I blow it with this trade?
I don't think you blew it. Like Martin Necas, we feel like we knew his ceiling since he was great last year, but isn't slated so far to see any increase in deployment. So I get what you were going for with Necas, and I don't think it's anything to be upset about. And Garland is more of a wild card. We didn't know his upside or his downside coming into the year. And so when we see him go off the way he is, we wonder, is this the real Conor Garland? And sometimes we need to wait for more of an answer. It's like, yeah, like it could be, it might be. I'm not waiting about Conor Garland to say that I think the answer is no, this is not the real Conor Garland. Here's a number to describe that. 120%. That is Conor Garland's 5-on-5 points participation rate, which means that Conor Garland has been on the ice for 5 goals at 5-on-5, and he's pointed on 6. Like, this is always fun when this happens early season. That means he touched the puck, left the ice, and then a goal was scored that he was able to pick up the primary, secondary assist on, even though he wasn't physically present on the ice when the goal was scored. So that's one reason, that his points participation rate shouldn't be 120%. It shouldn't be 100%. It's probably closer to maybe 60% is where we should expect it to be. So he's seen some extra points come that way. Garland has also scored 3 goals on 10 shots in all situations, which actually brings me to my next reason why I'm not like buying in on Garland. I think all of his production is masking this thing about Garland that's been really disappointing, because in the past we've seen Garland put up some really fantastic shot numbers. And we've mentioned this earlier about Garland, but he's averaging fewer than 2 shots per game this season, which is really icky for someone who approached the 3 shots per game mark at the height of his value last year. So Elon, you're asking me if you should regret trading Garland for Necas. Your only regret should maybe be that you couldn't wait longer to sell Garland so that he could be peaking even higher when you got rid of him. But I think selling Garland high is also a really wonderful move that you can try and pull off, because I am not seeing a lot of this as being real. I still think he's probably a 55, maybe 60 point player. The upside is there for him to be 65, but at this point, with the way he's shooting, which is barely at all, I see that as less likely.
Right. And like you're saying, even if he's still on the ice for the same number of goals, there's no way he's going to be getting points on every single one of them. Hey, if you've got Garland, shoot an offer to the Pettersson manager. Who knows? Maybe you can pull something off. That would be magic. Okay, so of course, Garland was previously on the Coyotes, who have just been so bad, just terrible to start the season, even worse than Buffalo, which I don't know. I guess it was a race to the bottom. Buffalo's had some good games. Nothing for Arizona. And the player who's been hit the hardest so far in terms of fantasy has got to be Jacob Chychrun, who put up a big old goose egg to start this year so far. No points in 5 games. He does have 8 18 shots. It's 3.6 shots per game, even more than the number of shots per game he was taking last year, but nothing got by Sorokin yesterday or any goalie so far. So, Brian, is this a Pettersson-like situation where we've got a potential steal on our hands if you want to go after a star player having a slow start? Or is there a chance that just Chychrun will continue to be a bust this season, especially now that we've been seeing this power play 2 deployment behind Gossesbehere? That's been super weird. I don't know how long that's going to last, but while it does, that's weird. And he's taking all these shots, but maybe nothing will go in. Like, I don't know the quality of these shots, but definitely concerning that he has no points in 5 games.
You should definitely be sweating this if you have Jacob Chychrun. We've already discussed this, though. Chychrun is only like a Pettersson type steal if he gets back on the top unit. And if not, you're not stealing him because you're probably just getting a 40-point guy who shoots a lot. He could still have more goals than any defenseman would get if that's valuable to you in your format. But the reasons to love Chychrun that we saw last year, we already called them unsustainable going into this season, and they take another hit if Chychrun really is off that top unit. And Gostisbehere seems to be doing okay there for now. By the way, mentioned on the stream scheme this week, to hear the rest of Dave Betton's amazing streamers, you should go into your favorite podcast app and search for Stream Scheme to figure out how to best manage your schedule. Dave had Kairu last week when I don't think everyone was talking about him yet. So find out who else Dave is mentioning. But yeah, going back to Chychrun, I wouldn't be happy to have drafted him right now, not being on the top power play. All these shots are cold comfort, because he's not going to be able to put up the number of points that he would have been had he been able to hold on to his top power play job, which maybe there's a route back to him getting. But at this point, I am, you should be sweating. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it would be a really interesting decision if you had to decide between Chychrun and like Tyson Barrie right now in the cupful.
Because, who would you prefer?
I think I prefer Chychrun just because I'm a nervous guy, and like Chychrun gives you that floor, right? He's with all these shots, he's still giving like 2.5-ish couple points per game. And once those pucks start going in the net, if just one of them goes in a week, you're looking pretty good. But of course, Barrie maybe has that more upside since he's on a top power play, at least for now, and it's a power play that's actually scoring goals. So yeah, that would be an interesting one. I have a feeling you would go with Barrie over Chychrun in the cupful, right? I know for sure that Joel here in the chat would go with Barrie.
Chychrun, you're at least getting the shots, but Barrie has the upside. I think I still believe enough in Barrie to go Barrie here.
Yeah, Chychrun also just has not only the shots, but like the guaranteed deployment, though not the top power play, though. That's what's so frustrating.
That's it, yeah.
All right, so continuing with busts, Chychrun's teammate, Nick Schmaltz, has also done nothing, and he used to be on Chicago with Jonathan Toews, who is also still pointless on the season in 5 games. And actually, I wrote that before today's game where Chicago lost 6-3 to Detroit. Brian, did Jonathan Toews do anything today?
Yeah, he got 2 points.
Oh, all right, so forget it. I guess Jonathan Toews is fine. Yeah, I was just going to ask you another typical question of like, is Toews someone to be worried about? I feel like probably he's still a little bit someone to be worried about because Chicago has just been terrible. They just lost 6-3 to Detroit. Nice to see him getting on the board. So he assisted on a Tyler Johnson goal, and I see he got a power play assist on a Dominic Kubalik power play goal along with Seth Jones. So, okay, good to see. I guess we weren't going to expect Jonathan Toews to be pointless all season long, but also we were kind of hoping for like a 60-ish point guy, maybe even a potential 70-point guy like he was before he missed that season. So, Brian, you have Toews in cupful, right? I believe. So, yeah, are you nervous about him? Is he someone you're considering dropping at some point, or is he like a hold still for a while?
I have Toews in a couple of leagues. I am holding on for now. I got offered Chandler Stevenson for him in one league. I turned it down because I think Toews is still, like, the upside is still there for him. And like I said about Montreal, Chicago is having these team-wide issues, and it looks real serious in Chicago. And I'm worried absolutely that something deep down is wrong with that team on the ice as well as off. Maybe it's going to be harder for Chicago to overcome whatever they're facing than we'd have imagined. Of course, that'll impact Jonathan Toews, but I've got to see what they look like when they right the ship, and I'm willing to give them another week to do that. But honestly, after tonight's effort, I'm actually like just browsing Twitter while we record. Like someone posted this Liam McHugh posted some screenshots that make it look like Jeremy Colleton called a timeout and handed the dry erase board to the players, and they drew up a play during the timeout and then gave it back to him. And that was the timeout.
That sounds like something that would happen on Ted Lasso. Like Ted Lasso would just be like, all right, guys, why don't you just roll up a play for us? I want you to believe in yourself. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's something that would happen in that show.
Yeah, well, that was down 6-3 with like 8 minutes left in the third. So I'm yeah, I wonder what will come next. Things seem like very, very messy in Chicago right now, and that doesn't bode well for Taves. Of course, Kane is like going through COVID protocol too right now, so that'll impact how Taves does, is how soon Kane can come back.
Yeah. All right, fellas, we're down 6-3. No idea's a bad idea, okay? Like, let me hear your creative ideas. Maybe we can get something going. Like, I feel in Ted Lasso they'd come back and win that game after some inspirational things, and or maybe that like assistant coach guy ends up coming up with a really good play. But yeah, it didn't happen for the Hawks today. So unfortunately, and Brian, I think you were right because like Chandler Stevenson is without Stone and Pacioretty, so he has like no value. I don't even know if I would add him out of free agency. I'd at least consider adding Taves out of free agency. So yeah, he's better than Stevenson. At one point, it looked like Kevin Lankinen was going to be getting the start, and then like in the end, it turned out that Fleury played. I wonder if Carlton regrets that, or maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. But yeah, Fleury, man, what a rough start to the season. I'm so glad to have dodged that bullet and not have gotten him in any of my leagues, and I feel so sorry for anyone who drafted him. I don't even want to ask, like, how do you even answer it? But Brian, if you had Fleury and Kakupfel, you've got to be considering just like dropping him, streaming him out for another goalie. Like, this is going to be a rough season, and he might even lose starts to Lankinen, so I can't really see a reason to hold. This might be one of the worst picks of the draft at this point in most fantasy leagues.
Yeah, I would be super concerned if I'm holding Marc-Andre Fleury, which I'm not, and that's not a brag. Like, I'm sorry to anybody who did take that chance. He was an 840 going into tonight's game with a 5.63 goals against average. Those numbers, I think, somehow got worse tonight. So, I do, like, like I've said, like, hold the fort on Lehner and on Hellebuck, don't on Fleury. I would just let go, because the Chicago team is a far way from being in a good spot, and so is Marc-Andre Fleury, who, like, I respect and I trust that he might be able to salvage some of this season, but holy cow, this is not looking good, and I wouldn't want him on my roster while everyone is figuring everything out.
Yeah, it's not like Jonathan Taves, where if you leave him on your roster and he's not doing anything, at least he's not hurting you. Like, Fleury is actively hurting you right now. I'm not going to let this guy hurt me when I could drop him for someone who might potentially not only not hurt me, but actually help me. So, yeah, tough for him. Seth Jones is actually doing pretty well. He had a power play assist today. He's got 4 points in 6 games right now. So I'm sure he's not happy about how the season's going, but he's doing well offensively at least. And, of course, Jones was previously on Columbus, who I wanted to bring up because we've got to talk, Brian, about Boone Jenner. What a start to the season for Boone Jenner. 4 goals in 5 games. And, of course, his shooting percentage is unsustainable. I know you're going to say that, so I'll just say that for you. But hard to argue with this deployment right now, right? He's been on the top line and top power play with Laine and Voracek, though of course that could change. They just lost 5-1 to the Canes on Saturday. But hey, that one goal was scored by Boone Jenner on that top line. So Brian, you've always scoffed at me, and for good reason, when I've been into Boone Jenner. Like, there was once a time, a long time ago in 2015-16, where he had a 30-goal season, and I thought maybe he could do it again. You said no way. You were right. But here we are now, 4 goals in 5 games. He's still only 28 years old. It's not like as if he's like an old veteran who's having one last, gasp. Like, he's getting this deployment that he's never had before. I'm not saying he's potentially going to be a superstar all of a sudden, but do you think Boone Jenner is worth rostering? Like, he's still in free agency in most of the leagues I'm in, and he's looking pretty good. And plus, he's also good for hits. So like, he's not only just a points guy. Even if he doesn't get you a point, he can still help you a little bit in peripherals.
For sure. And that's the reason to be into Boone Jenner. By the way, do you know how old would you guess Boone Jenner is?
I said he's 28.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I should have listened more closely, because like I was surprised that to find out Boone Jenner was only 28. It feels like we've been talking about him for ages, and he's always had this like older veteran lunch pail kind of vibe around him. I like, you said I might crack on his shooting percentage. I like that Boone Jenner has 3 power play goals. I'm not as concerned about a player's shooting percentage if a lot of it is because of power play shooting, because we expect to see that come at a higher rate of success than shooting at 5-on-5. So I'm actually not so down on it. Like, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have all 3 goals, but good for Boone Jenner for scoring 3 power play goals. And in the past, when I've scoffed, and as you said, rightfully so, I don't recall he's ever been both top line and top power play, which is why I'm not going to scoff this time. Jenner looks like he's in a good place to succeed. The only place I'm going to pump the brakes here is remind everyone he has a career high 49-point pace. So keep your expectations reasonable. You might say, well, he's never been in this position before. He could break out. I think there's just a reason he's never been in this position before. I could see Jenner having a Nick Foligno-like season, like the seasons that Foligno had in Columbus when he was on the top power play unit too, where he'd go on these little runs and be worth streaming in, and then he'd go very, very silent, and you should just let him go unless his peripherals were helping you. I'd give the same advice on Boone Jenner. By the way, isn't it crazy? I don't know, Elon, would you have predicted that the most valuable Columbus centerman going like at this point of the season would be Boone Jenner? Like you could have put money on Roslovic or Texier or even Cole Sillinger, but none of them are doing anything. It's like embarrassing, and Texier is barely even playing.
Yeah, well, and Domi came back and was looking good, but then he's injured again. I mean, I think we had this discussion on the show where I brought up like 5 centermen that could end up being the one worth rostering. And so far, like you say, it's Boone Jenner, and I agree with you. He's definitely not like a season-long hold guaranteed. Like Brad Larson could change up the lines in the next game, but for now, I don't think he should be a free agent in a lot of leagues. I mean, next week, I think he plays like Tuesday and then not again until Friday, Sunday. So maybe you wait and get him for those Friday, Sunday games as opposed to holding him for only one game early in the week. But definitely have someone, at least someone to have on your radar, on your watch list, all that stuff. Okay, so that takes us to our final stop because Boone Jenner is playing obviously with Patrick Laine, and Laine came from the Winnipeg Jets, and we need to talk about the Jets. Of course, they've got these COVID protocol issues right now with Wheeler and Scheifele, so let's not dig into that. Hopefully, they'll just be back and fine soon. But I want to talk to you, Brian, about Nikolai Ehlers, another one of these struggling players that we weren't expecting going into the year. He finally got off the schneid on Saturday, picking up a power play assist for his first point of the season. But of course, that power play assist came in a situation that he's not normally in. Normally, he's not on the top power play. He just happened to be there assisting on a Kyle Connor power play goal because, like I said, Scheifele and Wheeler weren't in the lineup. So you could even say that point isn't something that we would normally expect for him. Basically, he's pointless on the year then outside of that power play assist. And this is a guy who was almost a point per game last year, a huge breakout. What is going on with Nikolai Ehlers? This has got to be another Pettersson situation, right? Like, or like, are you seeing issues under the hood? Or is he just, like, I see he's still shooting. So we need to like say something to calm down the Nikolai Ehlers managers. I tried to make a trade offer for him in one league and I got rejected. So obviously the people who I'm playing with are smart, but he's someone that I feel like would be a great get right now. I'm very surprised that he's had so little success offensively.
Same. And Ehlers is like Pettersson in that he's someone I have a lot of faith in and have a lot of trust in, just like everything being fine. But he's unlike Pettersson in that his numbers underlying the obvious ones that we see most clearly, like the points, they're still actually really good. In fact, they're even like really good compared to his numbers from the last couple of seasons. Small sample, so I expect them to regress, but we're seeing him on the right side of his numbers rather than the wrong side of his past numbers. So for Ehlers, I think it's just been bad luck. He's been on the ice for only 3 goals at 5-on-5. He hasn't pointed on any of them. He's actually been on the ice for. Oh, okay. He hasn't pointed on any of them. He himself has not scored a goal at 5-on-5, no goals on 15 shots. Meanwhile, he is shooting a lot. As you mentioned, Elon, Ehlers' shot rates are up. He has been playing with Stasny lately instead of Pierre-Luc Dubois. I wonder if Mark Scheifele being in and out of the lineup impacted things at all in the flow and feel, whatever. But I think Ehlers, like you were right to try and buy low on him. He's a great buy low candidate. I only see good stuff. He's got these Svechnikov, Tarasenko like spikes in his shot and shot attempt and expected goals rates, which is why I think you should go out and grab him if you can. In fact, I would also try and deal Tarasenko for Ehlers.
Oh, yeah, that was a question here in the chat by Ancient K100. So, yeah, I agree with you. I really like Nikolai Ehlers, and I would be really shocked if he doesn't put up a pile of points in the next week or two. All right, so Brian, that's everything I planned for the show this morning. That's everything I planned for the show this morning, but then some new news came out. So I'll just really quickly do a lightning round of some other stuff that came to my mind during the day today. So first of all, Eklund was benched by the Sharks today, and so that's something to keep in mind that maybe that could happen. The coach was just basically saying like, okay, he's played a lot of games. Maybe it'll be useful for him to see a game. He's only a rookie. He's very young, so I'm not going to read too much into it. He's had a decent start to the season, but his ice time had been decreasing, and now he got benched for a game. So, I don't know. Maybe this will cause actually some fantasy managers to drop him, and it might be a good opportunity to pick him up, especially in like a keeper league where you're keeping like 7, 8, 9 people, to the point where like you might even potentially keep him. We'll have to see how the rest of the season goes, but he's obviously a very high upside guy, but also super young. I also wanted to throw out a couple hot streaks for you, Brian. I'll just throw these all out to you, then you can respond to what you want. Here's 3 hot streaks that are on my mind for next week. Lundell on Florida, Anton Lundell. We were talking about how Sam Reinhart went down to that third line, and that might be a concern for him, but maybe not. Maybe that was actually like fine for Reinhart and also good for Lundell, who all of a sudden got this amazing line mate. And Lundell has been amazing so far. He's now up to 5 points in 5 games. Oh, wait, sorry. Lundell has actually been amazing so far. He's now up to 5 points in his... Sorry. Lundell It's actually been amazing so far. He's actually now up to 5 points in his last 3 games. I think that's since Reinhart came on his line. Florida plays Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday next week. So if you need a streamer and it's a deepish league, maybe consider Anton Lundell. So that's one name for you. Then you've got Ryan Getzlaff. You know, we've been talking all about Shattenkirk, I guess, on short shifts. Ben and Lewis talked about Shattenkirk and the great start he's had. Ryan Getzlaff is also looking really good over on Anaheim. This is a guy who we thought was maybe done having relevance in fantasy, but a really strong week last week, capped off with a 2-assist game against Minnesota, including 3 shots and 4 blocks. Always nice to get blocks from a forward. And Anaheim, again, another good schedule next week, so I definitely don't think Getzlaff's a good long-term hold, but for 4 games next week, look at him. And then finally, over on Colorado, we have to mention JT Compher, who is getting that good deployment in terms of a top power play spot with the Avs, which we thought, would go to like Kadri or maybe Burakovsky, but no, it's been Compher, and Compher has been producing. He has 4 points in 5 games. I guess no points in either of his last 2 games, but still you can't ignore the top power play. It's just another guy that's on my radar. And yeah, that's all I had for you, Brian. Lundell, Compher, Getzlaff. What do you think?
Fun group, and everyone we should be keeping an eye on. Absolutely. I think, with Anaheim, you mentioned their 4-game schedule, and I think that's really great to point out. There's not a lot of teams this week that play 4 games. You've got Florida, you've got Anaheim, and hang on.
Yeah, Brian, that's not right. There's a lot of teams that play 4 games.
No, there's not.
Well, I guess it depends on. Oh, yeah, I guess you're
right.
You've
got Florida, you've got Anaheim, you've got Arizona, Calgary, Carolina, LA, Montreal, and that's it. It's 3-game weeks for everyone else. Well, almost everyone else. Yeah, others have 1, and then Ottawa, Nashville, and Edmonton only play 2. So McDavid owners, plan accordingly. Like, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to make up for him not playing a whole lot. So one way you could do that is by looking at these Arizona guys So one way you could do that is by looking at these Anaheim players. So good one, Elon. And then you mentioned JT Compher on Colorado. Yeah, I like a guy playing on the top unit that, like, as long as Andrei Burakovsky is banished, that could be really good news for Compher. We've seen him in years past in Colorado get these sort of opportunities. It was always him or Alex Kerfoot who got to step up when there was an injury in the top 6, or to come, or actually just on that top line to come in and fill in. So this is a nice opportunity for Compher that he hasn't seen too many of lately. And by the way, Nazem Kadri started the year strong with 4 points in his first 2 games. He's been quiet, but he has 10 shots still. So honestly, I like JT Compher even just playing with Nazem Kadri at 5-on-5 too. So great streaming suggestions, Elon. And again, if you want more streaming suggestions, Stream Scheme, check it out.
Yeah, for sure. Stream Scheme. And then also we're going to have a couple more shows coming at you this week. As per usual, we'll get 2 more short shifts to bring up more players, but hopefully this was enough players. Maybe you might have to go back or maybe you took some notes as you went, because I think, Brian, we've covered like 50 players or more on this show. This has been a blast. The time has flown by. Thanks so much to everyone who's listening to the show. I hope you're liking this new season of Keeping Karlsson. If you are, or if you're not, tweet at us. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear it at Keeping Karlsson on Twitter. If you are enjoying the show, we'd of course appreciate that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a nice comment. That really helps out the show and doesn't really cost you anything. You're already on the internet. Why not just go and give us a nice review on Apple Podcasts? If you want to support the show in a financial way, we have a Patreon program going on Patreon where we ask for only $5 a month and we give you our hearts in exchange. You get to join our Discord server where Brian and I are active all the time along with all the other brilliant patrons helping each other out. Plus there's all these like bots and tools that just make it a really fun experience. You kind of have to see it to believe it, but there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Obviously Kevin and Jeremy and others have really helped to build this amazing thing, which is our Keeping Karlsson Discord server. And that's not it. We also give our patrons these monthly patron casts, which we just did one last week and you could go listen to. I'm sure a lot of that stuff actually was a fun chat, Brian. A lot of like sort of more existential questions as opposed to just questions about specific players, just about like strategies and general ways of thinking about fantasy hockey. So that was a really fun chat that we had on our patron cast. We share our show notes every week. Brian and I wrote a book for this episode, and it might be nice for people who don't have time to listen to the whole show to quickly just control F for, Petrie and see what the quick takeaways were on him before you actually get a chance to listen to the show. So that and many more perks are waiting for you if you become a patron of Keeping Karlsson. So you can check that out over at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But with that, Brian, I think we're good to head on out for another show. So why don't we go ahead? I think we're good to call it a night for another episode of Keeping Karlsson. So why don't we cue that outro music and you can go ahead and read us the credits.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our superest supporters, Christopher, Josh, Tom, Kevin, Derek, David, Rob, Patty, and our newest one, Andrea. Thank you so much for all of your support. Also, thanks to Kevin A. Bear and Jeremy Versillo for helping moderate our amazing patron community and Discord server. Thanks to Julien Paquette for putting together the tweet clips that we tweet out. And thanks to Shams for helping us run our Game Day Twitter accounts, Game Day Lines, Game Day Goalies, and Game Day News NHL. And thank you to all our Cupful co-commish team. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and NBC Sports Edge.
NBC Sports Edge, can you please make an app? It's kind of annoying. I have to like go on my browser on my phone to like go. It doesn't seem like it would be too hard. There used to be a Roto World app. Why can't NBC Sports Edge make it? Isn't it the same company? I don't know. I would appreciate that. So that's a little request over there. We'll give you free advertising if you make that app. How about that? But okay, great job as always, Brian. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. And I'm really looking forward to hearing Short Shifts this week with Ben and Lewis. And then I'll talk to you, Brian, next Sunday for another mega show.
Until then, please keep doing what you're doing to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Blah, blah, blah. Good show. You're muted, but I'm sure you're just like talking about how awesome that was.
How awesome your sound effects were? Yeah, that is exactly what I was saying.
Wow. That was fun. Bit of a bumpy ride, but we made it here.
Bumpy ride.
But by the end, the edited show, no one will even know. I feel like my notes were just like poorly written. Maybe that's what happens when I'm writing notes until 3 a.m. and then waking up and writing more notes. I need to get a proofreader for these.
I mean, sometimes I catch stuff. Today I didn't.
Yeah, well, you had quite a few notes to write yourself. Okay, well, thanks everyone. Adam,
thanks everyone.
Yeah, everyone in the chat here.
Thanks for the YouTube stream. Streamers, viewers.
Brandon says that Boone Jenner is 378 years old.
Ding, 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 ding.
That's about right. That's the number of episodes we've done of Keeping Karlsson. Is that what he was referring to?
Whoa.
It's 379. We've actually done more. I don't even know why we're keeping this count, because we also throw out bonus episodes and short shifts. Anyway, I'm going to go. See you, everybody. Bye, Brian.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.